jihadists going to potentially slip through the net. That is why security services have voiced their concerns this morning.
Yeah, and others for that matter. And, of course, Shamima Begum's lawyer has come out swinging, saying that she will have a stronger case to return to this country because of her human rights now. So where exactly do we stand? At the moment, the Labour government, yes, they've frozen asylum claims. They want to assess the situation a little more. Other European countries have done exactly the same. But Austria's going further, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Austria is now deporting or planning to deport all Syrian refugees from the country. Perhaps some would say that's a little bit too far. The UK government's announced this morning a new deal with Germany, that Germany's going to make it a specific criminal offence for people smuggling gangs to make people go across the border of the English Channel, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, but they are. They're doing yet another agreement. We shall see if anything comes of it, Cameron. I mean, we hear so much about this. I just wonder whether any of these little agreements with various countries on people smugglers or on the boats themselves will actually make a difference when there is absolutely no deterrent besides that treacherous journey to coming here.
Yeah, and as the Home Office Minister, Angela Eagle, was saying this morning, she conceded that it's a bit like playing whack-a-mole with these people smuggling gangs. You know, arrest a couple of them and another spring up over here. So it's really difficult. But she also says that that is not a reason to stop trying. Yeah,
I mean, what do you make of this threat that we're now facing? You know, people in the streets of Britain were celebrating, and across the world, we're celebrating the toppling of this Assad regime, a butcher of his own people. But could the replacement be worse? And could we now be seeing more and more terror come to our shores? I hope not. But that's what the security services are warning. GBNews.com/your say. Should we get the headlines with Sam?
Cameron, Emily, thank you very much indeed. Just gone at 12 o'clock, the top story this hour. The UK and Germany have struck a landmark deal to crack down on migrant smuggling ahead of a major meeting of European ministers in London earlier. Germany has pledged to tighten its laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers, enabling small boat crossings to Britain. The agreement also includes intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. Well, speaking at that meeting with European leaders earlier, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said the plan will boost border security and save lives.
Gangs have been getting away with it for far too long. That's why today's meeting is so important. In recent weeks, we've already seen the important impact of a collaboration across our countries, the significant arrest of a major suspect involved in smuggling engines and boats, involving collaboration between the Netherlands, Belgium and the UK, the series of arrests that have taken place across Germany with the French-led operations in the last week.
Billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a seven-figure donation to Reform UK after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. Speaking with leader Nigel Farage in Westminster in the last half hour or so, Candy confirmed his commitment, calling Reform the future of British politics. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds ahead of May's local elections. The move comes as Reform UK continues to gain momentum, boosted by recent defections from the Tories. Birmingham City Council has reached a deal to settle historic equal pay claims with liabilities of up to £760 million. The agreement, which involves 6,000 low-paid workers, is being hailed as a historic outcome for women employed by the council. Settlement payments are expected to be up to 4 times higher than those first offered in 2021, with payouts due next year. The Labour-led council has declared itself effectively bankrupt last year due to those pay claims and has since implemented steep budget cuts and tax rises. Councillor John Cotton says the deal is a key step towards ending pay inequality. The UK and Cyprus have announced a new partnership to combat organised crime and illicit Russian money. Following Sir Keir Starmer's visit to Nicosia, the two nations agreed to share intelligence and expertise to enforce sanctions and tackle financial crime. Cyprus has already frozen £1.5 billion of Russian assets since the invasion of Ukraine and joined a UK-led initiative to block vessels evading oil sanctions. Well, the deal marks the first UK-Cyprus high-level meeting since 1971. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says it's part of his plan to starve Putin's war machine and protect global stability. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says that every pound of taxpayers' money will face scrutiny in a fresh spending review. She'll outline the approach alongside NHS workers today at Maidstone Hospital, promising savings and efficiencies to focus on the government's so-called plan for change. Departments will be pushed to cut waste, aligning budgets with priorities set by Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. The review kicks off as Rachel Reeves launches phase 2 of the spending review this afternoon. The boss of Thames Water has defended paying executive bonuses as the firm pushes for a 59% hike in customer bills to avoid collapse. Chris Weston says competitive packages are essential to attract top talent, despite a 40% rise in pollution incidents and debts now nearing £16 billion. The regulator Ofwat has already blocked Thames from using bills payers' money for bonuses and will decide next week if the new proposed increases can go ahead. Critics, though, blame the water industry's focus on profits for decades of neglect, with unions now calling for Thames Water to be taken back into public ownership. The firm, though, insists higher bills are crucial to secure funding and avoid running out of money by early next year. 6 people have been charged with being members of a banned Kurdistan terror group following an investigation by counter-terrorism police. The Metropolitan Police say the individuals, aged between 23 and 62, will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Tuesday. The Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as PKK, banned in the UK since 2001, has waged an armed separatist campaign in Turkey since the 1980s. Officers have thanked the Kurdish community in London for their patience during their ongoing inquiries. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to begin testifying today in a trial over charges of fraud, breach of trust and bribery. It's taking place today after a court rejected a request to postpone it until March 2025. Despite the ongoing war in Gaza, he's expected to arrive very shortly in court. Netanyahu is facing charges in 3 cases, known as Case 1000, 2000 and Case 4000. The trial venue has been moved from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv for added security, with his testimony to be heard in a fortified underground hall. And back here at home, hundreds of tractors are set to roll into Westminster this week as farmers protest changes to agricultural inheritance tax. Rally organisers say that October's budget proposal is a death knell for British farming, limiting tax relief to the first £1 million of property. On Wednesday, tractors from across the UK will line Whitehall before taking a slow drive through London with speeches demanding action from the government. Dementia has become the leading cause of death in the UK, with over 75,000 lives claimed last year. Alzheimer's Research UK warns the crisis will only deepen, driven by the ageing population, unless the government steps in. The charity is urging the government to use the 10-year health plan to future-proof NHS dementia services and ensure the condition doesn't remain a death sentence. The number of people living with dementia is set to soar to 1.4 million by 2040, putting immense pressure on families and public services. Charities and government officials are now calling for swift action to tackle the growing challenge. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour. Now, though, it's back to Cameron and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam. Now, the British government has frozen Syrian asylum applications as fears grow British jihadists could be returning to the UK following the collapse of the Assad regime.
Yes, this all comes as a former chief of MI6 has been warning that there could be a serious spike in the threat posed by Islamic State to Europe. Now, this is very worrying indeed, and I'm interested to know what you at home make of all this. Is it surprising, really, that you see the toppling of a dictator by an Islamist group, and then now concerns follow that there could be a raised terror threat here in the UK, that those British jihadis who made their way over to Syria because they thought Islamic State and the Islamists were the way to go, well, could it be that they now probably might like to take the journey back to Britain and could potentially be involved in terrorism over here, or at least in perpetrating extremism.
Yeah, now, of course, Assad has only been toppled for the last 5 days or so. Whitehall sources saying it's very early days, the kind of state that Syria is in. We have had some of your views in already, actually, on this subject about asylum in general, particularly Syrian asylum seekers. George says, I say send all Syrians back home who have no right to be here. We have enough migrants as it is and refuse to take any that are thinking of coming here who have been released from prison by these rebels. He's referring, of course, to those 12 hard-lined jihadis. Perhaps some would say that some of these Syrian asylum seekers fled the country in the first place to flee the Assad regime, but now perhaps they want to go back and rebuild their country.
Well, of course, Shamima Begum's lawyer is jumping on this as an opportunity to say that Shamima Begum must come home. She must have her citizenship restored. I mean, it has the highest court in the land has already said no. This has gone through the courts for God knows how many times. But yes, because apparently the detention camp that she's been living in could be shut down, and therefore she could face more dangers to her human rights. I would ask whether our human rights here in Britain matter more, but there you go. There's always a lawyer to represent a terrorist sympathiser, a jihadi bride.
She lost her citizenship on grounds of national security. She's 25 at the moment. She was 15, actually, when she went to Syria to marry one of these Islamic State fighters who was killed, I think, in an airstrike, if memory serves me correctly. But, of course, it's human rights grounds. That's what the lawyer was telling the Telegraph this morning, because if she is kicked out of the camp that she's in northeastern Syria, she could potentially be more of a target or could be completely left alone, and then it's up to us.
I don't know about you, Cameron, but I imagine that the majority of British people don't really care about Shamima Begum's human rights. I mean, we've discussed this so many times before on this channel. Every time it's come up in the court, every time she's launched a new appeal against the Home Office decision, and this sympathy is very weak indeed. There are some of you, though, who do say, you know what, she's our problem. She should face the consequences in our courts here in the United Kingdom. But I would say a majority definitely think that Shamima Begum should stay there. I should say that we are very shortly going to be interviewing Nick Candy. Now, he's the billionaire who's decided to back the Reform Party instead of the Conservatives. Now, he had given hundreds of thousands of pounds, I believe, to the Conservative Party, and now he told Christopher Hope a little bit earlier that he's going to raise tens of millions for the Reform Party, or at least that's the ambition. Yeah, this property
tycoon. He said in a statement this morning that he actually wants to raise enough money for Reform to win the next general election, which would mean Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. What do you make of that? Let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what people make of, billionaires getting involved in politics and, potentially bankrolling political parties. Do you have a problem with it, or do you think that's just how it goes?
Well, isn't that just kind of what happens anyway? But it's just because he's defected to Reform, we're now talking about it. But actually, behind the scenes, there's several very rich people who will donate to the Conservative Party, to Labour, now to Reform, and perhaps it will make the party more legitimate, some would argue. But he seemed to dodge the question a bit earlier on about Elon Musk, whether Elon Musk should donate tens of millions of dollars to Reform UK. I think that would ruffle a few feathers, that's for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of Nigel Farage and his party, I think it was a couple of weeks ago that Nigel was warning that we could see a wave of migration from Syria. Now, that was before the Assad regime had physically been toppled, and now Assad is a refugee in Russia, by the looks of things, being protected by Putin and his administration over there, his regime over there. But it does look, that could be a possibility. That could be a possibility. We're talking about how lots of Syrians in this country may well take the opportunity to go back home to Syria, help rebuild the country. That's if they fled because of the Assad regime and its brutality. But equally, if Islamists are now in control, if terrorist sympathisers are now in control, they are still a prescribed group, this HTS group that's taken some control of the country, could we actually see more of a flow of migration from Syria over to the West, over to Europe, over to this country.
Yeah, and the government seemed to have dodged the question as to whether or not they would downgrade this group, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, as a terrorist organisation. They have previous links to al-Qaeda, who, of course, are responsible for the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. In 2001. They are the group that's overthrown the Assad regime. They've given amnesty to all the regime soldiers, and perhaps the latest attempts to try and convince the West that they can be a legitimate, not political party perhaps, but can control Syria. But then Joe Biden, the US president for the next month, has reportedly been in talks with them via Turkey to see if there's some kind of deal that can be struck. But of course, is that completely pointless? Because President-elect Trump is taking over in around a month's time. So any work that Joe Biden does could just be completely reversed by Trump.
Well, he made some, choices when it came to the Ukraine-Russia war. He's very much willing to make some big decisions, even though he's been voted out. But there you go. That's what leaders tend to do. But yes, I mean, Chris Philp, he's the Shadow Home Secretary, so he's the Conservative Shadow Home Secretary. I mean, he's been taking the opportunity to go on the airwaves to say that Labour haven't got a clue on this, that David Lammy isn't quite sure. I mean, David Lammy gave a bit of a speech and he hadn't quite twigged or caught on to the fact that the Home Office had already decided to freeze those asylum claims. And he also wasn't sure in his geography where Libya was in relation to Syria and the like. So this has all come at the new government quite fast, hasn't it?
Yeah, but also I find that absolutely baffling how the Foreign Secretary was not briefed on what the Home Office was doing when it comes to asylum claims, from Syria.
Yeah.
Surely, as Foreign Secretary, he would have either been involved or at least briefed before he was stood up in the House of Commons, in the open House of Commons, and started talking about what he was talking about.
I'm not sure they're all that sure what to do, whether to continue to prescribe this HTS group, or whether to continue to freeze asylum claims, and whatever else. But there you go. We have got a lot coming up for you next. We are going to be taking you to that exclusive interview with not only Nigel Farage, but also Nick Candy. He is the billionaire that has switched from the Conservatives to the Reform Party. He says he's told us already that he wants to raise tens of millions of pounds for the Reform Party. Could that help their chances at the next election? And we are going to be speaking to the former Rugby World Cup winner, Lawrence Dallaglio, about the plight of boys in this country. He's got a plan to make sure they get on, that they beat the girls. We shall see. That's after the break.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yes, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforced in the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line. And I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
OK, welcome back. It's now 12:21. You're watching, listening to Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily, and Cameron Walker. Now, there's a growing crisis in British education with a widening gap between boys and girls. While girls are on the track to meet Sir Keir Starmer's goal of 75% of children being school-ready by age 5, so the girls are doing all right, boys are falling far behind, with only 60% hitting that mark of being ready for school.
Indeed. But this gap extends beyond school, with boys more likely to be excluded, underperform in exams and face bleak job prospects, frankly. The Centre for Social Justice has launched a new inquiry into this issue, calling it the plight of the lost boys.
Right, well, joining us now is former Rugby World Cup winner Lawrence Dallaglio, who's been doing a lot of work in this area. Lawrence, it's fantastic to have you on the show to talk about this. It is a concern that boys simply aren't getting on as much as the girls are, not doing as well when it comes to education and potentially even job prospects. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing to try and correct that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, first of all, good afternoon. It's great to be on the show. I think it's just raising the plight of boys, really. We tiptoe around every other kind of social group, but boys tend to get left behind. Obviously, I'm backing this campaign, Lost Boys, because it's having a real impact, not just in the classroom, but in prisons and dare I say it, in mortuaries as well. I set up a different charity called Rugby Works. We work with kids who are excluded from mainstream schools, of which, worryingly, there are 230 young people between the age of 14 and 17 excluded every week. 75% of them are boys, and the next time we see them is in court and then in prison. And if you think about it, 65% of the entire prison population has been excluded from school. So I just think we're not doing enough to really help young boys in this country. As I said, we seem to be putting every other social group before them, and it's a big problem that needs to be addressed. The government are aware of it. They've mentioned it, and the Education Secretary is fully aware of it. And this campaign from the CSJ is kind of highlighting it, really. It's pretty tough being a young boy in this country right now.
And Lawrence, you previously suggested that boys are sometimes taken for granted and they're treated as the lowest of the low. What do you mean by that, and what needs to happen to change that narrative?
Well, I just think that no young person is born bad. They're just born into chaos, really, and they just need a lot more support and help. I mean, there's a huge amount of evidence that suggests that boys need young role models. They need mentors in their life. And many of the young boys in this country don't simply have that sort of support system and that framework around them. And therefore, we need to understand, what's going on for a start. We need the data and evidence, which, believe it or not, we still can't work out what young boys' fathers are in prison and which ones aren't. But 96% of the entire prison population is male. So, it's clearly a problem. It's clearly an issue. They need support. And the government, dare I say it, needs to do a lot more, because they're living in this kind of lost society. No one's really aware of what's going on at all. I mean, the fact that I can sit here and tell you that 230 young people are being expelled every single week from school and 65% are ending up in prison, that tells you that we've got a big problem in this country, and it costs a huge amount of money at the back end to put someone into a prison, £370,000 per person. and it costs a lot less to actually deal with the problem. So I just think this campaign is a brilliant campaign. The CSJ is the government's conscience, if you like, and they need to have a conscience about young boys.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, do you think that for some boys, they're just not sure who they're supposed to be these days? Are they supposed to be strong providers, you know, the patriarch, a family and the strong one, or are they supposed to be more emotional and show their emotions and things? I think it's quite hard, isn't it? I feel like boys don't know exactly what they're supposed to be, who their role models necessarily are.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's hard for any young person, boys or girls these days. I think it's certainly a lot harder than it used to be. But what we need to do is to provide them with an outlet for their emotions, their energies, point them in the right direction with the right set of values, social responsibilities. I think I would say this, but sport is a big part of that. It could be arts, but I think we need to get more sport played in our state schools that give young people, young boys, a framework to which to drive their behaviours. And we need to look after people after they are excluded from school. Just because you're excluded from school, it doesn't mean you should be excluded from society. And, I think that is a big, big responsibility of this government, because there is a real problem and it's only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We already know that the prison system is in a mess and it needs restructuring. And, if we're excluding more young boys, then all we're going to get is more problems on the system. So we need to look after people. We need to realise that not everyone is born into a loving family and a caring home where they get unconditional love and support. They're born into chaos. And if you're born into chaos, then it's pretty more likely that chaos ensues after that. So I think there is a lot more we can do to invest in young boys, to recognise that they need those male role models, to invest in programmes like the CSJ suggesting, like Rugby Works, or it doesn't have to be sport related, it could be art related, but we can change behaviours of young boys, not just in the classroom, but I believe outside of the classroom as well. It's not suffice to say, well, they're born bad and therefore they're going to become bad. That is not the case at all. I think there is very simple things that the government can do to ensure that young boys have prospects, that have the understanding, the learning, the mental health issues that exist in this country. There's... And men
need to, Lawrence, men need to step up too, don't they? They need to step up. They need to be there for their children. They need to be there for their sons. Unfortunately, we have far too many disappearing dads, don't we? So boys don't really have a male role model to look up to. This is about men taking responsibility too, isn't it? So that the younger generation of men can stand on their own 2 feet and have a brighter future.
100%. And, listen, I think the parenting issue, but whether it's male role models for young boys, whether it's sporting role models, whether it's in the arts, whatever it might be, of course, we all have a part to play in that. But as it stands at the moment, we don't even have any statistics on how many young boys are without fathers. We don't know how many fathers are in prison. The pupil premium, for instance, is not linked to, it's not one thing that fits all. You don't know what the circumstances are around young boys. So yes, 100%, I agree with you. Role models are massively important, but I think more needs to be done, which is why this campaign is vitally important. I think we're sort of turning a blind eye, and it's not just this government. Previous governments that have been in power before are just ignoring a certain section of society. And as I said to you at the beginning of the interview, we're tiptoeing around every other social group when actually boys are as important as anyone else.
And Lawrence, just briefly, when I think of rugby, I think discipline, I think teamwork, I think determination. And with those boys that you've supported through Rugby Works who have been excluded, what are they like when they come out the other end? What are their prospects like?
Well, I can tell you now that currently, without going through a programme like Rugby Works, 65% end up in prison. When they go through our programme, which takes 3 years, 85% of those young boys and girls end up in full-time employment or education. So please don't tell me that you can't change behaviours and you can't change prospects for young people, no matter where they're born or what family they're born into, because you can, and the government needs to start waking up and listening to that.
And Lawrence, just very quickly, my producer wants me to ask, what's going wrong with the England rugby team at the moment? Apparently we're not doing as well as we should be, Lawrence.
what's going on with every rugby team. Well, it's only a few points away from being very successful. So I wouldn't worry too much. You know, they're playing Ireland next, and you know, you never know what might happen. Ireland are one of the best sides in the world, and England managed to beat them last season. So the next game could be a big turning point for England.
OK, well, there we go. Positivity.
Yes.
And I hope you have a very happy Christmas, and thank you for the good work you're doing for boys. It's really important. It's not spoken about enough. Lawrence Dallaglio, former Rugby World Cup winner, rugby legend. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more still to come. We have an exclusive interview with Nick Candy, Reform's new billionaire member, as well as party leader Nigel Farage. It's one you won't want to miss. That's next. Now it's time for your news.
Cameron and Emily, thank you very much. It's just after 12:30. The UK and Germany have struck a landmark deal to crack down on migrant smuggling ahead of a major meeting of European ministers in London today. Germany has pledged to tighten its laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers who enable small boat crossings into the UK. The agreement also includes intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. While speaking at that meeting with European leaders earlier, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said the plan will boost border security.
Gangs have been getting away with it for far too long. That's why today's meeting is so important. In recent weeks, we've already seen the important impact of a collaboration across our countries, the significant arrest of a major suspect involved in smuggling engines and boats, involving collaboration between the Netherlands, Belgium and the UK, the series of arrests that have taken place across Germany with the French-led operations in the last week.
Billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a 7-figure donation to Reform UK after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. Speaking with leader Nigel Farage in Westminster, Candy confirmed that commitment, calling Reform the future of British politics. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds ahead of May's local election. Well, the move comes as Reform UK continues to gain momentum, boosted by recent defections from the Tories. The UK and Cyprus have announced a new partnership to combat organised crime and illicit Russian money. Following Sir Keir Starmer's visit to Nicosia, the two nations agreed to share intelligence and expertise to enforce sanctions and tackle financial crime. Cyprus has already frozen £1.5 billion of Russian assets since the invasion of Ukraine and joined a UK-led initiative to block vessels evading oil sanctions. The deal marks the first UK-Cyprus high-level bilateral meeting since 1971. The Prime Minister says it's part of his plan to starve Putin's war machine, and he says to protect global stability. And Birmingham City Council has reached a deal to settle historic equal pay claims up to £760 million. That agreement, which involves 6,000 low-paid workers, is being hailed as a historic outcome for women employed by the council. Settlement payments are expected to be up to 4 times higher than those first offered in 2021, with payouts due to start next year. The Labour-led council declared itself effectively bankrupt last year due to those pay claims and has since implemented steep budget cuts and tax rises. Those are the latest headlines for now, and plenty more still to come with Cameron and Emily straight after this short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A largely sunny but cold day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Much more cloud for England and Wales, and we'll see some thick fog patches forming once more tonight, particularly under this area of high pressure. That's bringing a lot of dry weather. Notice the isobars still close together across the south. Much of England and Wales still a cold breeze blowing out there. Some lively gusts to the west of hills, and 1 or 2 showers still grazing in across the far southeast of England and along the south coast. But for most, it is dry. Some patchy rain turning up in Shetland later on. Generally sunny for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures, though, still struggling in places here, particularly where the fog is slow to clear. Further south, 8-9 degrees at best, but again feeling colder with that breeze, which will continue to ease down as we go into tomorrow. The winds remain light across Scotland and Northern Ireland. A little bit of rain trickling into Shetland, where it is a bit milder. Much of mainland Scotland struggling to get much above freezing, and the fog thickening up tonight, particularly in and around the Glasgow area and across the west of Northern Ireland. That fog is going to be dense, forming again this evening and lasting through the night. For most of England and Wales, it's just dry and cloudy. Some breaks in the cloud, northwest England, parts of northwest Wales. Keep some clearer skies here, may allow those temperatures to fall away. And still just a few showers feeding in towards London, across East Anglia and the far southeast, and still quite a brisk and chilly breeze blowing here. As I said, that will keep the temperatures up above freezing for most of England and Wales, but well below across Scotland and Northern Ireland, as well as that thick fog, pretty harsh frost. On to Wednesday. More of the same, although the fog is likely to be even more stubborn during Wednesday. It could last all day west of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, particularly in and around Glasgow. Patchy rain across Shetland, the odd shower still across southern parts of England, but many places will be dry. Still on the chilly side, though, wherever you are. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Jules Buckley. There's a lane closed on the northbound M1. It's on the exit slip coming off of Meadowhall Junction 34 towards the Tinsley Viaduct. There's a breakdown there and it's causing queues. Big problems in Lancashire. The southbound M61 is closed between the slips at Clayton Brook Junction 9. That's the M65 turn-off. A collision there is causing delays. Now, Warwickshire, the southbound M6, Coventry to Rugby, Junction 2 down to 1. 2 lanes coned off. Emergency repairs causing delays this morning. Lane 1 is coned off on the northbound M1. That's Hemel Hempstead up to Redbourne 8 to 9. Looks like an issue in lane 1, causing queues and long delays. 4 miles worth of congestion in Essex on the northbound M11 just after Bishop Stortford Junction 8. All lanes though back open. It follows there an earlier collision. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It is 12:38 exactly. Now, the property tycoon and husband of pop icon Holly Valance, Nick Candy, has left the Conservative Party and joined Reform UK as Treasurer.
Yes, the billionaire former Tory donor accused the party of making too many broken promises and breaching trust. So just how damaging is this latest defection from Kemi Badenoch's party from the Conservatives?
Yeah, let's now cross to Westminster, I believe, and speak to GB News political editor Christopher Hope, who's joined by Nick Candy and hopefully leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. Chris, over to you.
Anyway. It's irrelevant. They'll still be there at 5 o'clock anyway.
You on air tonight?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Join me now, joined in the studio here in Westminster by Nick Candy, a leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. And Nick Candy, why are you joining a party with just 5 MPs?
Well, Chris, thank you for having me, but I love our country. I think our country is amazing, but our country is in decline. I've got friends across the political spectrum. I've got some very good friends in the Labour Party. I've got some very good friends in the Tory Party, and they will always be my friends. But I genuinely believe it's time for a change in direction, and that change in direction is reform. And Nigel Farage.
This year, you backed the Tories at the start of the conference this year. I saw you at the PopCon event, then Labour at the election, now Reform UK. What is your political journey? Why are you moving around so much?
Listen, I voted for Tony Blair when he came to the election. I voted for Boris and David Cameron and the guys there. I didn't vote for Labour at this general election. I said Keir Starmer's a good guy with good values and that it was time for change. After some 13 years of some promises that were made that weren't delivered on, I felt it was time for change. However, the last 4 or 5 months under Labour has been a disaster for them as well. They know it, we know it, the country knows it. And I believe that Reform and Nigel are the future. And I'm going to back them because we have one last chance at this. I've got 2 young daughters here in the country. I would like them to grow up here, but they don't need to grow up here. I have a choice, OK? And when my grandma came here to the UK, and she came from Cyprus many, many years ago, she's not with us anymore, she was a waitress up in Neasden. And I look at what's happening today, and she would have to be on the NHS wait list for 2-3 years. It's just a disaster. The country is in decline.
It's a Tory failure. Labour trying to get it right.
Labour have got it so wrong already. You can't tax your way out of this problem. Okay, you have to grow the economy. Okay, and I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. But what I can do is I'm very good at raising monies for funds for businesses. I'm very good at helping operations of businesses, and I will make sure that Reform UK has the right funds to run their operations and businesses correctly.
You say you can raise enough funds to make them win the next general election. Nigel Farage, to my right, will become Prime Minister. How much do you think you can raise?
I think for past general elections, sort of 25 to 40 million pounds has been raised for previous parties, and I think I will do significantly better than that.
More than 40 million?
Yes.
Wow, and you're...
Already this morning, I've had millions of pounds worth of donations from people that have never donated to a political party in this country. But it's not just about...
That's incredible.
It's not just about getting rich donors and billionaire people, whatever, or millionaire people to donate. We need the guys that have got £1, £5, £10, £25, £25 to be a member of Reform. Reform has 100,000 members now. The Tories have 130,000 members. I'm sure in the next 6 months, Reform will go past the Tory on membership. And that will be a game changer in this country. And once they start winning some of these local elections and these by-elections, it's going to be a complete game changer. My only job is to raise them the funds to do it properly.
You'll be the treasurer in the new year of the company that owns Reform or the membership party?
Well, that is something that I'll deal with that. You know, I set the thing up as a company because I didn't want a new, nascent political party to be taken over, hijacked by bad forces, and now the party's matured, you know, and it's gone beyond its teenage years in terms of development. So I'm changing it from my shareholding to being a completely different structure where effectively the members will own it. That's with the lawyers. I've got to get the Electoral Commission to agree to the change. It takes time, but it's happening. I mean, I promised two things. You know, when I was in the town hall in Clacton on that election night, I said two things. I would democratise the party. Well, we set branches up all around the country. They're choosing their candidates. I'm changing the structure. I'm with the lawyers. But I also promised, perhaps even more importantly, from the point of view of most of the public, that I'd professionalise the party. You know, no more shoddy vetting, the right candidates, the right people, the right structure. And I think putting in place people like Zia Yusuf as chairman has shown, you know, I want to get professionals involved. And today is a very, very big further step.
It's a big moment.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy raises, he knows rich people. Until now, it's been on you, really, isn't it, fundraising?
Yeah, completely. No, completely.
You're sort of got the professional in maybe to do it.
There's no pressure on him. He's doing it because he wants. But you heard him earlier. Yeah. You know, he's got 2 young daughters. He's worried about the future of this country. I bet you watching live now, there are people of all ages really scared that we're in societal decline, that we're led by people who seem to accept this sort of gentle downward spiral. We're much more optimistic than that. We genuinely believe we can turn this around. And it's why, and you come to a Reform members' event. I mean, they're like rock concerts because people are optimistic. These are the people that will give us a better future.
They're far removed, though, from, if I may say so, the wealth of your new treasurer.
So what?
Yeah, maybe so what?
Do you know what? Whether somebody has nothing or a lot of money, they're all human beings with the same feelings, the same emotions, the same concerns for their kids and grandkids.
And also, I started with £6,000 in 1995 with my brother. My grandma lent us that money. That's what she could afford. So for all the people out there that are upset with the state of the country and where it's going, and you've got to have hope. And if you don't have hope, yes, then you've got nothing, yes? Okay, and you have to have aspirational to do better. And I believe that Nigel is the right guy to do that for this country. I've seen it firsthand. He started as a dear friend, a close friend, and he's still a dear friend, okay? My kids call him Uncle Nigel, okay? And, like, you know, but I've got other friends in the Labour Party and the Tories. Yes, and those relationships will stay. You know.
Have you told the Tories, like Kemi Badenoch, that you're...
Not Kemi, but I spoke with, you know, I resigned my membership last night, okay, and I've spoken to Boris and other people. And okay.
What do they say to you when they say that you're backing Nigel Farage?
So listen, I think they will be upset that I've gone to Reform, but at the end of the day, we're friends, yes, and friendship. We can have different views on religion, business, politics. Doesn't mean I'm not your friend. Yes, we can respect each other's values and morals. Okay, that's what it's about.
Just on the nuts and bolts, you're going to give a £7 million figure. Has that happened already?
No, it hasn't.
Seven figures.
That's millions of pounds to laymen.
Yeah, so I will give I've committed to reform and to Nigel that I will give a 7-figure check. But also
that one donation will transform your party. I mean, your biggest donation so far is 250,000 from Zia Yusuf, right?
In this incarnation, that's true. Yes, that is true.
I mean, that's the first.
And by the way, Chris, this morning, already on my phone, we have millions of pounds of donations from friends.
What made, or pledges or donations?
Pledges that they said, listen, I will give you 250,000, I'll give you 500,000, I'll give you £1 million. Can you come and see me? Can Nigel come and see me? Can we speak? Yes. But we're not just after these huge donations. We need the person. I was the guy on the street, yes, that could only wanted to become a member of a party and pay the £25 membership donation. OK? We need all of that. Yes? We're going to have... We're not just going for these large cheques. We want to make sure from ground up we've got huge donations. Yeah. And Gen Z love Nigel. And the amount of money that he has the ability to raise from them, and the way he relates...
a TikTok generation.
He relates,
very much so.
They relate to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this, of course, is, again, part of the big revolutionary change in British politics that I think is happening before our very eyes. It is a very engaged 16 to 24-year-old.
Can you turn it into power MPs? You know how hard it is to break through with the system weighted against you.
You know, I've been at this game over 30 years. And I've had some good days and I've had some bad days, of course, inevitably. I think we're at a moment, potentially historic moment in British politics. And you know something? If we don't succeed, I just fear we're going to see our country continuing to go down the drain with many of our brightest and best young people leaving Britain.
While I've got you, there's rumours Suella Braverman may be your big signing for the MP base in Parliament.
You tell me.
I'm asking you. You're the boss of the party.
Well, you're the one who does all the gossip. You know.
Her partner's come across.
Her husband joined at the weekend and within 24 hours was out leafleting and knocking on doors. Incredible. And he texted me and said, at last, something I can believe in again. As for what Suella's going to do, I don't know.
Are you talking to her?
No, I haven't done, actually. I haven't spoken to her since the election.
But other Tory MPs might come across?
I don't know.
Last question for you. Elon Musk.
Yeah.
The money man is here. He knows how to talk to rich people. Will Musk donate? Do you want him to donate?
I don't know. I'm the fact that already today I'm going to say retweeted because re-X doesn't really work, but he's retweeted already a post about Nick becoming the party treasurer, and he said interesting. And I know Nick's got connections with him as well. Look, the fact that he's supportive of us, we're delighted with. If he wants to give us money, and it's legal money, we'd be thrilled.
Nick, just finally to you. You know Elon Musk. You might come across and give us some money.
I've never ever met him personally, but I have a very dear friend that is close with him. And actually, when Boris wanted to speak to Elon about 2 months ago, Boris's wife messaged me and said, do you think you could put him in contact with Elon? And I did that via my friend. OK? So there will be a chance to speak with Elon. And if he wants to donate, of course, we'd love him to donate. It can be done properly and legally and through the right mechanisms, then absolutely fine. Yes, but it's not all about just one guy. It's not all about Nick Candy. Yes, this is about, changing this country for the better. And my only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we will break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change.
And just finally, do you really think this man here, Nigel Farage, can be Prime Minister in 2029? That's what you're saying here with your pledge.
I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
Well, Nick Candy and Nigel Farage, you've got lunch to go to. Thank you for joining us here on GB News. Back to you.
Much, Christopher, for bringing us that interview. Very, very interesting indeed. Interesting to hear that Boris Johnson wanted to get in touch with Elon Musk, so Boris's wife got in touch via Nick Candy and his friend.
Yes, and Nick was saying that Boris perhaps upset, but we're still friends. And I think that was kind of nice, actually. Despite your political differences, you can still be friends and respect each other's views.
Yeah, Nick Candy there insisting that he does not want to be a politician, but he's the money man. He's the money man. He can raise the funds, he can do the business, he can do the operations, he can do all that side of things. Should we speak to political correspondent at The Spectator, James Hill? James, I hope you were listening into that interview. Quite interesting, isn't it? Nick Candy doing this very open interview, talking about what he's going to bring to the party, talking about his relations with other politicians. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, very interesting. I think it's all very much part of a big pattern whereby people are trying to show movement from the Tories to Reform. And Nick Candy is one of those figures who perhaps isn't so well known outside Westminster, but very much well known inside Westminster. For context, Emily, the biggest ever political donation in history was Lord Sainsbury when he died in 2022. That was just over 10 million. So that seven-figure sum that Nick Candy was talking about there, that could be one of the biggest ever donations in British political history, and that will be a formidable war chest. For context, the Conservatives, they're laying off people now post-election. Lots of contracts are up. They're laying off staff. So if Reform is able to build and grow and hire more people to help their mission, that could put it in a really good position for 2029.
And James, Nick was saying that millions of pounds of donations have been pledged by people who have never donated to a political party before. How significant would that be?
I think it could be potentially very significant. It's very much all part of the kind of movement, as I say, where people are breaking their long-standing habits of voting for one of the two main parties, Labour or the Conservative, and actually being convinced to give a new go on something that's new, novel offer, a new party. And as I say, Cameron, it's partly about the money, partly about the voting habit, but also about showing a momentum shift. And traditionally, first past the post, which we use for Westminster elections, has been very much the enemy of Nigel Farage's parties, of UKIP and Reform, etc. Now, actually, if you show them suddenly as one of the two big parties, you get a different voter perspective where suddenly they're going to be voting for Reform as one of the two big parties. That's the key thing to watch. And after 2026, we have Scotland and Wales. I think 2029 is going to be a really big contest. And as Farage says, once in a generation, once in 100 years, we could see one of the two big parties replaced by a new incomer.
Nick Candy saying there that he's not friends himself with Elon Musk, but one of his good friends is close to Elon. Would there be any legal issue or electoral issue with someone like Elon Musk giving money towards a party like Reform?
Well, look, the suggestion in the Sunday Times when the story first came out a fortnight ago about Musk giving $100 million would be through Twitter and X in the UK. So you could find a way to do it through a UK company potentially. I suspect that the talent that Elon Musk has on retainer, he'll be able to find a way to give the money legally if he wishes to do so. But it doesn't have to be necessarily cash. And also, I think, what's telling about Nick Candy's intervention is that people like Nick Candy, for whom, shall we say, they might have more resources than others, they will be normalising that behaviour of voting Reform. Traditionally, they've always been Conservatives. With Nick Candy, he was talking there about being an immigrant success story. If people like him and people like Zia Yusuf, whose family are very much examples of social mobility in this country, are going to Reform, I think that is a worrying thing for the Tories come 2029.
And James, many people in this country are fed up, let's say, with the status quo, cost of living crisis, winter fuel payments being cut for pensioners, etc., etc. And some people would say that many people are going to Reform because they are fed up with the status quo, and Tories failed them in the last administration, and they're fed up with what Labour's doing at the moment. But Labour at the very early stages, aren't they, of the Parliament? They won a big majority in the election in July. Do you think there is a way that Labour could bring it back if they could indeed make people's lives better in a couple of years when they've done all of this stuff at the beginning?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole gamble of the Labour Party, which is that they've taken 22 billion and given it to the NHS because they hope that if they are seen to deliver in public service reform, they're going to be rewarded by that. But of course, the two counter-narratives are, number one, that voters can often be, shall we say, ungrateful or unwilling to reward success. That's what we saw in America, where there was the so-called voteless recovery and the views of the Democrats. And the second point to consider, of course, is that voting habits are changing, Cameron, in a way they haven't in previous generations. So a lot more volatility right now on the left. That could go into a kind of workers' party, Galloway-style party in some aspects, or the Greens. And on the right, of course, it could go either to Reform or even the Liberal Democrats in the South. So it's a lot less certain, and Labour have a long way to go in the next 4.5 years.
It's a fascinating picture, James. We could speak all day about all things politics. James Heal, political correspondent at The Spectator. And before that, we heard from Nick Candy, the new billionaire backer of the Reform Party, and, of course, Nigel Farage as well. Lots more coming up on the show. Don't go anywhere. The British government has, for now, frozen Syrian asylum applications. What does that mean? The fear that British jihadists could return.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update here on GB News from the Met Office. A dry night for most places. Clear skies across Scotland and Northern Ireland will allow things to turn frosty and foggy, and there'll still be some rain across the southeast. A real north-south split with the weather. This chunky area of high pressure sitting across Scotland and Northern Ireland. That's where we've got the clearest skies. Frost forming pretty rapidly. Also, some thick fog patches developing. Meanwhile, the brisk breeze continues to bring quite a lot of cloud across the south and plenty of showers for Essex, Suffolk, down across Kent, the London area, and even as far as Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. That cloud will keep the temperatures above freezing across the south, whereas further north, well below. Some sheltered glens of Scotland may get down to -10. There'll also be some fog across Scotland in the morning and Northern Ireland. Could be quite dense, that fog, particularly for the morning rush hour. Quite a lot of cloud across the Northern Isles, but dry here. It's further south, particularly the western side of the central belt, where that fog could be thick. Also counties Fermanagh, Armagh and Tyrone. Also likely to have some dense patches of fog first thing in the morning. For most of England and Wales, it's a cloudy but dry start. Still a few showers, though, you'll notice, in and around the London area, crossing down through Kent. They'll still be there through the morning, slowly fizzling out. Not as many showers as today, certainly dry for the Midlands and eastern England. Brightening up, too, for northwest England, parts of North Wales. Should see some sunshine. Certainly most of Scotland and Northern Ireland looking to have a sunny day, although rain will trickle into Shetland later on. Temperatures are going to struggle, and some places will see that fog lasting all day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. If that happens, temperatures may not get much above freezing, and it's back for Wednesday morning. Really thickens up rapidly on Tuesday night. So again, dense patches of fog for Wednesday across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. England and Wales, again, predominantly cloudy, but apart from the odd shower on the south coast, most places staying dry. Temperatures, again, struggling in single figures, feeling cold.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Fabio, thank you for coming in. It's great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
So you were born near Rome?
Yeah, in a very small town. It's called Serrone, about an hour south of Rome. Yeah, on the hillside.
Was it a place of excellent cuisine?
It is indeed a place of excellent cuisine and red wines. In fact, it's the only DOCG red wine of the region. Yeah.
Most of your career, I mean, this may seem self-evident, you've cooked Italian. I'm thinking that's quite a challenge to cook Italian in Malaysia, to cook Italian in Bermuda or Turkey. Was that a challenge?
It was, yeah, but I like challenges, so that's one of the reasons why I started to travel, because of my job. For example, in Malaysia, I've been sent there to twist a grill restaurant into an Italian restaurant inside a 5-star hotel. And I was doing the chef training for the local chefs. And then I build the menus, I train the chefs, and then I eventually go back.
In Italian food, is there lots of innovation?
I would say in the past 10 years, yes. It used to be a very traditional cuisine, but in the past 10, 15 years, Italian chefs, they are a bit more open-minded, I would say.
Give us some examples of your innovation.
Well, hide and seek is very well around the innovation. In that bar is a bar and kitchen where we have a sherry plate concept, where we try to take our guests in a culinary journey, starting from a classic dish and then reinventing into a modern twist. Usually I like to twist the style of cuisine between different countries, different continents.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 10th of December. I'm Cameron Walker.
And I'm Emily Coleman.
The British government freezes Syrian asylum applications as fears grow British jihadists could return to the UK following the collapse of the Assad regime. It comes as a former MI6 chief warns there could be a serious spike in the threat posed by Islamic State to Europe.
OK, and this afternoon, the King will be presenting the first Elizabeth emblems to family members of former firefighters, police officers and other public servants who have died in the line of duty. We'll be hearing from some of them directly this hour.
And it comes as the...
Yes, there's been a lot on today, hasn't there? So we've got these Elizabeth emblems being handed out by the King, which is rather lovely.
Yes.
You've got Nick Candy saying that he's giving a huge sum to the Reform Party and that he's got, you know, on his phone all these other guys ready to give huge amounts of reform. Could that really shake up the political outlook for the next election? Maybe, or at least for the local elections.
Quite possibly. And we've got the threat of some British jihadis potentially returning to the streets of Britain in some not very nice news at all, actually. So big variety.
Yeah, and it looks like Shamima Begum's lawyer is going to have another go at it.
Quite possibly.
Trying to get her back into the country after how many attempts?
And also, remember, every time they lodge an appeal against her losing her citizenship, it's the British government's lawyers that have to fund the defence, which, of course, costs us as taxpayers as well. So that could potentially cause a few problems too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to know what you at home think we should be doing with regards to, well, the threat of terrorism, of course, but also in terms of refugees, because most European countries, it seems, have now just frozen applications, refugee applications, asylum applications from Syria. The idea is that they're going to wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
Now, of course, a lot of the people who fled Syria initially to Europe and to this country, you know, the 1.5 million people, I believe, who came to Europe, that was because of the Assad regime. So what happens now? Do they go back? You mean Austria is ready to deport. Robert Jenrick is saying that people should be deported now that Assad has been toppled. What's the answer here? Would that be too soon? Would that be a bit harsh to say, well, Assad's been toppled, time for you to head on home back to Syria?
Well, all the officials are saying it is way too soon. There could still be perhaps some issues or some safety issues for asylum seekers currently in this country who potentially have been in this country for a decade or so now, going back to Syria. Are their lives going to be in danger? Potentially not all of them, but some might be.
Yeah, and what exactly are people celebrating? I mean, if this group that now takes control of the country, we're not sure exactly how that's going to look. I mean, the Labour Party certainly don't know. The government doesn't know. Everything seems to be on hold when it comes to decision-making. But let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. It is your headlines first for Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. The top story this lunchtime, while the UK and Germany have struck a landmark deal to crack down on migrant smuggling. Germany has pledged to tighten its laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers who enable small boat crossings to the UK. The agreement also includes intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. Speaking at a meeting with European leaders this morning, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said the plan will boost border security and save lives.
Gangs have been getting away with it for far too long. That's why today's meeting is so important. In recent weeks, we've already seen the important impact of a collaboration across our countries, the significant arrest of a major suspect involved in smuggling engines and boats, involving collaboration between the Netherlands, Belgium and the UK, the series of arrests that have taken place across Germany with the French-led operations in the last week.
Billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a 7-figure donation to Reform UK after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds ahead of May's local elections. Well, speaking to our political editor Chris Hope in the last few minutes, Candy confirmed his commitment, calling reform the future of British politics.
My only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we will break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
The UK and Cyprus have announced a new partnership to combat organised crime and illicit Russian money. Following Sir Keir Starmer's visit to Nicosia today, the two nations agreed to share intelligence and expertise to enforce sanctions and tackle financial crime. Cyprus has already frozen £1.5 billion of Russian assets since the invasion of Ukraine and joined a UK-led initiative to block vessels evading oil sanctions. The deal marks the first UK-Cyprus high-level bilateral meeting since 1971. The Prime Minister says it's part of his plan to starve Putin's war machine, adding it will protect global stability. The boss of Thames Water has defended paying executive bonuses as the firm's pushing for a 59% hike in customer bills to avoid collapse. Chris Weston says competitive packages are essential to attract talent, despite a 40% rise in pollution incidents and debts nearing £16 billion. The regulator Ofwat has already blocked Thames from using bill payers' money for bonuses and will decide next week if the proposed increases can go ahead. Critics, though, blame the water industry's focus on profits for decades of neglect, with unions now calling for Thames Water to be taken back into public ownership. Birmingham City Council has reached a deal to settle historic equal pay claims with liabilities of up to £760 million. The agreement, which involves 6,000 low-paid workers, is being hailed as a historic outcome for women who are employed by the council. Settlement payments, are expected to be up to 4 times higher than those offered in 2021, with payouts due next year. The Labour-led council declared itself effectively bankrupt last year due to those pay claims and has since implemented steep budget cuts and tax rises. A 26-year-old man has been charged with murder after United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in a targeted attack in New York last week. Police arrested Luigi Mangione at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania after a customer recognised him from media reports. Officers found so-called ghost guns and £10,000 in cash, along with a manifesto suggesting anger towards corporate America. Prosecutors say bullet casings marked with the words deny, defend and depose were also found at the scene, potentially linking the attack to critics of private health insurance. Mangione is now awaiting extradition to New York. Here, hundreds of tractors are set to roll into Westminster this week as farmers protest changes to agricultural inheritance tax. Rally organisers say that October's budget proposal is a death knell for British farming, limiting tax relief to just the first £1 million of property. On Wednesday, tractors from across the UK will line Whitehall before a slow drive through London's streets, with speeches demanding further action. Farmers warn the tax changes threaten food security and the future of the industry, calling on the Prime Minister to rethink his plan. And the family of a teenage photographer who inspired the Princess of Wales during her battle with a rare cancer is setting up a charity to fund vital research. Liz Hatton, who died last month at the age of just 16, captured global attention when she photographed Prince William at Windsor Castle, fulfilling her dream of working alongside top photographers. Well, her family's Just Giving page has already raised over £30,000 towards their goal to combat desmoplastic small round cell tumour, which has no dedicated funding in the UK. Liz's mother, Vicky, hopes the charity will provide support to families and fund better treatments to, she says, give more children a chance to live. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour for another update. Now, though, it's time to head back to Cameron and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Britain. It is 1:09. Now, the British government has frozen Syrian asylum applications as fears grow British jihadists could return to the UK following the collapse of the Assad regime.
Yes, this comes as a former chief of MI6 has warned there could be a serious spike in the threat posed by Islamic State here in Europe.
Well, joining us now is political correspondent Catherine Forster, who has just been in a lobby briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson. Catherine, what did they say?
Yes, good afternoon, both. Well, national security, Syria, and this potential threat of terrorists coming to the UK were absolutely top of the agenda in terms of questions to the Prime Minister's official spokesman in the lobby briefing. He said that national security is an absolute priority, stressed that the situation is, he said, fluid and fast moving, but did say that the intelligence services are looking very closely. He says they will not hesitate to take action. The concern, of course, is that although Assad has gone, and that's widely regarded to be a good thing, we do not yet know ultimately what will replace him. This is all very new. It's moved very fast. This group, HTS, that has seized control, was previously linked to Al-Qaeda, and also there's many jihadists in jail who potentially could now be released. So a lot of concern. But the government, as we heard yesterday, has frozen asylum applications for Syrians. They will not be being processed at the moment until we are clearer on whether Syria is going to be a safe country for people to go back to, in which case many of them presumably will want to go home. Also on the fact of HTS being a prescribed terrorist organisation and whether the government therefore couldn't speak with them. The Prime Minister's spokesman was clear that he said under Section 12 of the Terrorist Act, they can have communications with this group, largely around things like aid, getting aid to people in Syria at the moment, and the political way forward. So I don't think they're going to tell us if they're talking to them. They certainly wouldn't be drawn on that, but they've basically said they're talking to everybody, and their intelligence services are keeping a very, very close eye on what's going on.
Isn't it, Catherine? Because we've been hearing that Joe Biden's been speaking to them or communicating with this HTS group through Turkey, through a third country. So it could be, as it stands, that our government is speaking directly with this prescribed group.
It could be. We were asked, we said, would you tell us if you were speaking to them? And the answer came back, we're not going to get drawn. So I think we do not know. But certainly the fact that we gathered that United States are, pardon me, reaching out via Turkey, we are often very much influenced, aren't we, by what the United States does. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, the Prime Minister was on yet another foreign trip to the Middle East. When he set off on that trip, he thought it was all going to be about trying to drive growth and investment into the UK, making a number of sort of business announcements. But in fact, it's been entirely dominated really by this incredible situation that's unfolded in Syria and the speed at which it's happened.
And just lastly, sorry, no time frame has been given on this issue of Syrian asylum applications. As it stands, they've been frozen pending sort of seeing what the situation is like on the ground.
Yes, no time frame at all. And I think we simply do not know. It's going to take time now that Assad has been removed or has fled to work out what comes next. Clearly, the British government wants political settlement. That's what they will be driving towards. But we don't know how it's going to pan out at all. And this group, the HTS, they've tried to sound a much more moderate tone. They've said that no group should feel that they will be excluded. But of course, we heard the Taliban, after they got back in Afghanistan, said that they had turned over a new leaf and that they would rule very differently, that women's rights would be protected and so on and so forth. And we can see how that has gone. So this has all happened very quickly. But in terms of what happens next, I think that's going to take much, much longer to become clear.
OK, Catherine Forster, political correspondent, GB News, thank you for joining us. Well, let's get more now from writer and broadcaster Emma Trimble. Emma, thank you for joining us here on Good Afternoon Britain. First of all, I think many people watching at home or in their car, if they're listening on the radio, will be thinking, well, what does all of this mean for us? How big a threat are these British jihadists who potentially could be returning to Britain come? How big a threat is the instability in Syria to the UK?
I mean, this is a reason why the government are now saying that we are on high alert, and this is really significant. And the government obviously now have frozen these any new asylum claims from Syria. But I think the concern, actually, aside from that, is that, as we've seen from the footage, that a lot of these prisons have been taken over by this terrorist organisation, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, releasing prisoners. There are a lot of detention camps in Syria, including detention camps that are controlled by the Kurds, that are holding British jihadists. So it's not just those who might come to seek asylum here who may have been involved, for example, in ISIS, but the families of ISIS fighters, perhaps some of them with British citizenship, maybe some of them with dual citizenship, people like Shamima Begum, who could potentially have the right to return here. So this does cause an enormous security challenge for the UK, and also not least because it's looking very likely as if in this vacuum that the leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, he was previously sent to Syria by al-Baghdadi, remember him, of ISIS fame, the leader of ISIS. He was sent to be the leader of Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria, and that is the origin of this group. So it had gone through various mergers. At one point, it pledged its allegiance to Al-Qaeda. It distanced itself from them, not necessarily for ideological reasons, but probably more for strategic reasons. And now is the leader of a rebel alliance that involves a number of other Islamist groups, and of course some smaller non-Islamist groups who are helping them to overthrow Assad. So this is really quite serious, and particularly as Catherine mentioned there, the fact that they're claiming to be more moderate, saying things like diversity is a strength, which is obviously trying to prey on the kind of gullible naivety of the West. We just have to look at what's happened in Afghanistan with the Taliban, who said that they were all about women's rights. Like an abuser, they said that they changed. They haven't. They've now banned women even talking to each other. So this is really significant for the region. But of course, what happens in the Middle East has a knock-on effect here. And I think our concern should be the threat of returning British jihadists and their families, as well as concerns about our porous borders and asylum claims.
Yeah, so Emma, to get this straight, while millions of people have been celebrating the toppling of Assad, a brutal dictator who has killed hundreds of thousands of his own people by most accounts, it's actually what replaces it could lead to more terror, more national security, British jihadists back in this country, a raised terror threat. And we've just got to rely, essentially, on the security services to keep us safe while the government sort of decides what to do on migratory flows and decides what to do when it comes to asylum applications. I mean, it feels powerless, really.
Yeah, and this situation could be much worse. Of course, Assad is a terrible evil dictator, nobody disputes that, but to see somebody like Angela Rayner doing interviews where she's welcoming the toppling of Assad, fine, we can welcome the fall of a dictator, but we have to look at what's going to take its place. And poor Syrian people who really have a choice between two evils here. For the minorities in Syria, I wouldn't trust a word that al-Jalani says when he claims that he's going to protect them, when he makes allusions to being perhaps more moderate than the roots of him and his group in ISIS and al-Qaeda. I think that we should be very concerned here in the UK that Labour don't seem to really have overcome their naivety in office when it comes to our borders. We already haven't got a hold on them. This poses a serious security threat to us. We do not know who's coming into our country. And there were many British Islamists who went out to go and fight in Syria, as I say, who are detained there. And the fact that Assad has fallen because his Russian allies were distracted and somewhat weakened, that their Iranian support was somewhat weakened by the fact that Hezbollah have been fighting Israel. Yes, all of this is good news in the sense that it has toppled Assad, but this has a knock-on effect for the region that could be absolutely disastrous, not just for the Middle East and the surrounding countries and the stability there, but also for us here because of the geopolitical entanglements of the involvement of China, Iran and Russia.
Well, you paint a worrying picture. Thank you very much indeed for your expertise on the show. Emma Trimble, writer and broadcaster, and also an expert in foreign affairs and extremism and everything similar. A worrying picture. Yes, you celebrate the toppling of one dictator. What happens next? You've got Islamists back in charge, extremists in charge. And what happens to our national security?
And a number of Middle East experts have been making the comparison, actually, to the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003 in Iraq and Colonel Gaddafi in Libya as well a few years later. And the instability in those two countries that caused is the same thing going to happen here. And people are making the point that, oh, well, all these Syrian asylum seekers in the United Kingdom can now go home and rebuild their country. Perhaps it's not going to be as safe as the utopian feeling that some may have now that Assad is gone.
Yeah, and crucially for us, do you trust the government and our authorities, our security services, etc., to protect us from potential jihadists coming over here as a result of this? Our own homegrown jihadists as well, who've gone over to Syria and been spending the past years over there. Could it be that they come knocking at the British door?
Yeah, around a dozen hardened Islamic State fighters from the UK is the quote here that we've got from the Press Association. So it is perhaps a particularly worrying time, but we've got the security services potentially warning about all of this. And what can the Labour government do? Well, it looks like they haven't quite made up their minds because they're saying, oh, it's very early days for us to be giving you any exact pointers of what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's all a bit tentative at the moment, but we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Hundreds of veterans are set to gather for Christmas lunch as GB News viewers. Yes, you at home have raised £52,000. What an achievement. That's next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So maybe people are opting for the more traditional ways of meeting people. Meeting organically.
It's the only way to actually... Well, I know some people have
it's worked very well for some people. I mean, I personally think that doing things more organically is probably going to be better, or is more to my taste. It has worked well for lots of people.
So I absolutely agree. There's a very interesting young woman, she's about 22, who writes on this and has a podcast called Freya India. And she talks about this dating industry, and she said all she ever wanted to do as a teenager was go down the pub and meet a man and fall in love. And the dating apps just don't do that. And she said they've become so, it's just literally people looking for sex. We need to get back to traditional ways of meeting face to face, but we also need to stop toxifying it. A man flirting with a woman is not toxic. Men and women have done this for years. Obviously, we need to know about boundaries, but we also need to allow men and women to do what comes naturally.
I think it's also about spontaneity in society. It's much harder to just randomly go out in an evening in London and not know what you're doing and have a good time than it was, I think, 15 years ago or so. Yeah, and if you don't have spontaneity in your life in general terms, then that spontaneous meeting with someone is less likely.
Also, I think it's also where you are, because I was just thinking, as you said, that London, going out to try and meet someone in London is one thing. If you live in a small town and you go down your local pub, there's you're more likely to meet someone that you get to know over a period of time.
But this is also why we need to support our pubs and our hospitality areas, because they are important social integrators. They really are. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 1:25. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Now, in the 1950s and 60s, more than 22,000 British servicemen worked on nuclear tests in Australia and the South Pacific.
Yes, the veterans now want access to their medical records, compensation and a public inquiry into what happened to them.
And back in October, the veterans' annual reunion at Pontins was under threat. Remember this from 86-year-old veteran Brian Yountank?
Down to Sand Bay, meeting with Alan and lots of the other veterans and the descendants and widows and other people. It makes you feel part of a big family group. You're always made to feel welcome, and all the volunteers who help make you feel, as I said, part of a major family, which we are.
Yeah.
Now there's only 2,500 of us left.
OK, well, there we go. Now, GB News viewers stepped in and did this.
Asked you viewers and listeners to GB News if you could help out. Well, you have. We wanted £25,000 to pay for the holiday.
And we're now at almost £36,000. Nearly 1,500 of you have donated this morning. Brian, what do you make of that?
If I said I was totally gobsmacked with the beautiful generosity of you, the presenters, and all of your viewers, I'm speechless.
Gosh, and it is such wonderful generosity from our GB News viewers and listeners. They've reached a total of £52,000.
Yes, and that money's gone towards a Christmas lunch for the veterans that is taking place today. Shall we speak to Jack Carson, our GB News reporter, who's on the ground at this Christmas... Oh, he's tucking in already. Lots of gravy.
Oh, jealous.
Well, trust you to come for me right as my Christmas dinner's arrived on the table. But as you can see around us, there are, well, nearly 60 veterans and their families that are here today for this Christmas lunch. It's absolutely fantastic. We've all got our party hats on, all enjoying this fantastic atmosphere. Because, as you mentioned, it's the GB News viewers that have helped put all of this together because of the incredible donations. As you were saying, more than £50,000 has been donated. And let's find out a little bit how much that means. Alan Owen, who is the founder, you're lucky, your dinner just hasn't arrived yet. Pull my cracker with me, Alan. Oh, there we go, I've won, that's all right. So, just kind of, tell me a little bit about, what this money that's been raised means for the campaign and means to be able to put on, events like this.
It's absolutely fantastic because we initially came on to ask for 1 year's reunion to be funded, and now we've got 2 years for the annual reunion to be funded and this Christmas meal. I mean, you just have to look around to see how fantastic today's been already with the service in the church, and here at the White Hart in Llandarog, it's just amazing to know that the generosity of your viewers have given this opportunity. We wouldn't have this opportunity without it. So just look around, they're so fantastic. It's amazing that you think that these people who serve their country, that we can give them something back.
I was about to say, because the campaign, has got a lot of aims, particularly, I guess, going into the next year about, what you want to achieve. But it's also remembering to still come together. Christmas is the time where families come together, and you are one big family here today, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. We've still got lots of things to do. We're nowhere near our goals. We've got lots of things to do in 2025 with the inquiry and other things. But today is about sitting down, remembering it's Christmas, having a great time, having great fun, and bring this community together.
Yeah, and just kind of talk to me about the recognition, because there's the nuclear test medal which has been awarded, and we were obviously at your reunion where you handed it out with the Deputy Lord Lieutenant at Somerset, which was fantastic. But there's the more recognition, really, that you feel that these veterans deserve.
Absolutely, they're missing medical records. The case is ongoing at the moment. If by the end of the year, if the UK government hasn't done something, John Healey and Al Carnes haven't done something, then we're going to be actually launching a case against them, because they still haven't had the full recognition and the apology that they deserve. How can you be the only testing country in the entire world not to provide compensation? It's criminal, and these guys deserve it. Today goes a long way to showing that they deserve this recognition, and it shows us that these people are still here. These people are a unique community that have seen a nuclear explosion. There isn't many of those people left, and we need to recognise them before they're all gone.
And just finally, what are you having on your plate today? Are you going Christmas dinner? What are you going
I've
with?
got beef, so...
And pudding? Are you Christmas pudding, apple crumble?
No, we're an ice cream, I'm afraid.
Oh, ice cream, OK.
Jack, you've gone full.
Oh,
I've
gone for everything and the trimmings. Look at that. I'll be tucking into that in a few moments. But, and, you know, as you can see around us, all of these veterans are having an absolutely fantastic time. You know, we've got people having their Christmas dinners, we've got people having fish pies, I think we've got beef Wellington on the menu today, and Brussels sprouts, of course, included. I'm a pro Brussels sprouter, so I'm enjoying it. There might be a few here with some grimaces at the sight of a Brussels sprout, but there we go. Look at that, fantastic. It's a fantastic atmosphere here with the nuclear test veterans, and all because of the generosity of the GB News viewers. So it only leaves for me to say one thing to everybody: Merry Christmas, everyone. There we go. Fantastic.
Oh, Jack, I was a bit worried there was going to be an awkward silence then when you said Merry Christmas, everyone. But no, everyone joined in. Fantastic stuff, Jack. Great report. Good to see everyone having a nice time and enjoying their Christmas lunch. I haven't had a Christmas lunch yet.
Nor have I.
No?
No, gutted. I'm very jealous of Jack's, actually, and huge generosity from GB News viewers, so thank you so much. And, of course, those veterans are so deserving. I like Brussels sprouts too.
We are great at raising money on this channel.
We
all
are.
sorts of good causes, and whether it's veterans, whether it's mental health, all sorts of things.
Absolutely, and we need that around Christmas time, don't we? A bit of positivity.
Bit of positivity, yes. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. We are going to be talking Reform UK and that exclusive GB News interview with their newest member, the billionaire Nick Candy. He says he's got huge amounts of money lined up for that party. What change will that make? After your headlines with Sam.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom, 32 minutes past 1. The UK and Germany have reached a landmark deal today to tackle migrant smuggling. Germany has agreed to tighten its laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers behind small boat crossings to the UK. The deal also focuses on intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, speaking at a meeting with European leaders this morning, said the agreement will strengthen border security and save lives.
Gangs have been getting away with it for far too long. That's why today's meeting is so important. In recent weeks, we've already seen the important impact of a collaboration across our countries, the significant arrest of a major suspect involved in smuggling engines and boats, involving collaboration between the Netherlands, Belgium and the UK, the series of arrests that have taken place across Germany with the French-led operations in the last week.
Billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a 7-figure donation to Reform UK after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds ahead of May's local election. Speaking to our political editor Chris Hope, Candy confirmed his commitment, calling reform the future of British politics.
My only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we'll break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
In other news, 6 people have been charged with being members of a banned Kurdistan terror group following an investigation by counter-terrorism police. The Met Force says the individuals aged between 23 and 62 will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Tuesday. The Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, banned in the UK since 2001, has waged an armed separatist campaign in Turkey since the 1980s. Officers have thanked the Kurdish community in London for their patience during the inquiries and pledged to continue engaging with them to address any concerns. And an urgent manhunt is underway after 4 students were sprayed with an unknown substance at the University of Greenwich overnight, triggering a full campus lockdown. Police were called to the site just after midnight, where a man was attacked and rushed to hospital with head injuries. 3 others were also sprayed, though their injuries are not life-threatening. The substance has been tested and found to be non-toxic, but the motive of the attack remains unclear. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at the top of the hour. Next, though, a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's how the markets are shaping up this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.2749 and €1.2116. The price of gold is £2,098.35 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently at 8,310 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A largely sunny but cold day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Much more cloud for England and Wales, and we'll see some thick fog patches forming once more tonight, particularly under this area of high pressure. That's bringing a lot of dry weather. Notice the isobars still close together across the south. Much of England and Wales still a cold breeze blowing out there. Some lively gusts to the west of hills, and 1 or 2 showers still grazing in across the far southeast of England and along the south coast. But for most, it is dry. Some patchy rain turning up in Shetland later on. Generally sunny for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures, though, still struggling in places here, particularly where the fog is slow to clear. Further south, 8-9 degrees at best, but again, feeling colder with that breeze, which will continue to ease down as we go into tomorrow. The winds remain light across Scotland and Northern Ireland. A little bit of rain trickling into Shetland, where it is a bit milder. Much of mainland Scotland struggling to get much above freezing. And the fog thickening up tonight, particularly in and around the Glasgow area and across the west of Northern Ireland. That fog is going to be dense, forming again this evening and lasting through the night. For most of England and Wales, it's just dry and cloudy. Some breaks in the cloud, northwest England, parts of northwest Wales. Keep some clearer skies here, may allow those temperatures to fall away. And still just a few showers feeding in towards London, across East Anglia and the far southeast, and still quite a brisk and chilly breeze blowing here. As I said, that will keep the temperatures up above freezing for most of England and Wales, but well below across Scotland and Northern Ireland, as well as that thick fog, pretty harsh frost. On to Wednesday. More of the same, although the fog is likely to be even more stubborn during Wednesday. It could last all day west of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, particularly in and around Glasgow. Patchy rain across Shetland, the odd shower still across southern parts of England, but many places will be dry. Still on the chilly side, though, wherever you are. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. West Yorkshire and Brighouse. Firstly, the Brigade Road, the A643. Now, that's closed by Bridge End. There's a police incident and it's causing queues. Emergency repairs this lunchtime. Southbound M6, Stafford South 13 down to Gailey at 12, a lane closed. Also on the southbound side of the M5 in Somerset, just after Clevedon at junction 20, a vehicle at the moment undergoing a tyre change there, so a lane closure in place. And some queues then either side of the M11. So firstly, northbound, just after Bishop Stortford at junction 8, a lane closed off, a collision there being recovered. On the southbound M11, that's partially blocked from Loughton at junction 5 down towards the North Circular at 4, and queuing again, that one is due to an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Well, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's now 1:39. Yes, the property tycoon and husband of pop icon Holly Valance, or former pop icon maybe, Nick Candy has left the Conservative Party and joined Reform UK as treasurer.
Yeah, the billionaire former Tory donor accused the party of making too many broken promises, talking about the Tories there, and breaching trust. Just how damaging is the latest defection from Kemi Badenoch's party?
Yes, indeed. Well, I think he said that he hadn't spoken to Kemi about all this. He'd spoken to Boris Johnson. Anyway, joining us now is former Labour advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Paul, are you worried about reform and just how much of the public seem to be interested in the message?
Well, I'm not worried if they carry on falling out with the Conservative Party and sort of leeching money and supporters and even votes away from the Conservatives, because that will help Labour stay in power forever. But I am concerned that he's wasting his money, because I don't really see reform breaking through. And I think the only danger of a reform breakthrough would be if they did a deal with Kemi. And at the moment, it seems such animosity on the right that there's no chance of that whatsoever. So I just think he's wasting his money. I'm sure he could have spent it on something better, with it, perhaps a new yacht or some such.
So, Paul, you think first past the post is still going to not be Nigel Farage's friend come the next general election, and that's actually just going to split the Tory votes between Reform and Tories, and then none of them get in?
Well, it's no surprise that Nigel Farage is a convert to proportional representation, because of that particular system of voting is the only way a small party can break through. It's the same reason that the Lib Dems support proportional representation. It's the only route they have to office, really, on their own terms. And so, it's very hard in our system for very small parties to do this. I mean, it has happened, but it only happens when there's a deal between a smaller party and a bigger party. And the last time I think it happened was 1906 or something like that, when the Labour and the Liberals cooked up a deal. But it ended up with Labour taking over from the Liberals. And maybe if Reform and the Conservatives do a deal in these different times, then it might be Reform transcends the Conservatives. But I mean, the big picture is it's just really bad news for Kemi Badenoch. She's supposed to be the bright new hope of the right, and has only been in office for a few weeks. She's getting bested every single week at Prime Minister's questions, and her big money donors are deserting her by the day. So it's just bad news for the Tories, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think Labour should be complacent about reform, though, because there are a lot of people in traditionally Labour areas who would rather eat a boiled frog than vote for the Conservatives for historical reasons, but they look to reform and they think, well, you know what? I am angry about the levels of immigration. I do think it's ridiculous that £300 has been taken off pensioners, but we're paying X amount for illegal migrant hotels and the like. You hear that a lot. You hear that a lot from former Labour voters. They're sick and tired of, these sort of policies coming from the Labour Party as well. And reform doesn't have the baggage that the Conservatives have.
I mean, all of that's true. And I think, I listen to a lot of voters articulating those kinds of views, of course. I'm not dismissing those views at all. But I would say to those people, you look at the Reform Party, they are the friend of billionaires. I mean, why is this billionaire giving money to Farage?
And all the parties have got their billionaires, don't they? I mean, Lord Wahid Ali, he likes to give lots of little donations, doesn't he?
Yeah, not a billionaire property magnate, though, is he? Not in quite the same league of super rich.
Millionaire, billionaire, yeah.
I think it seems starts to add up to real money, doesn't it? But I think the fact is that they're masquerading as a friend of the people, Reform, and I don't think they're a friend of the people at all. I think they're a friend of the property magnates, and today's announcement rather shows that. I think the whole thing's a bit of a scam. But Kemi must be really worried. I mean, you would think as a new leader, all the excitement would be around her. She'd have a big buzz, all the new donors that she should be announcing, and they're all heading out the door.
And we've got new donors as well, because Nick Candy was saying earlier on, Paul, that millions of pounds of donations has been pledged by people who have never donated to a political party before, and yet they are donating to Reform UK. What does that say about the state of politics in this country?
I think it speaks to a really deep malaise that our politics is in a bit of a difficult situation. I think people don't really understand the political system. People are sort of disengaged from it. And I think all the political parties, and including mine, have to up their game in reconnecting with people. But whatever the question is, reform is not the answer. And I think we need to fix the electoral system, fix the political system, reconnect people to their politicians, and so that these small disruptor parties don't get a foothold. And we've seen across Europe what happens when sort of, far-right disruptors form governments. It's usually a disaster. So I think we need to avoid that in this country and get back to our good old-fashioned, two-party system where you can vote left or right, and that's it.
That's it. Two choices. Back to basics. Paul Richards, thank you very much indeed, former Labour advisor and columnist. I'm not sure that's going to happen. Yeah,
and there was one national poll recently, wasn't there, where Reform overtook Labour as well. But, of course, it's very early days of the parliamentary session. It's only been 6 months or so. And as I said earlier, a lot of people are very fed up with the status quo in this country. So is it perhaps any wonder they're going to something that's perhaps completely new? Labour would argue, of course, that they're only just getting started and people's lives will improve in a couple of years as we get towards the end of the parliamentary session. But as you say, complacency will not be their friend.
Oh, yes, the powerful message of things can only get worse before they get better. From the Rose Garden. Keir Starmer told us that. But it's all about immigration. Let's be frank. If the Conservatives had lowered immigration, I don't think Reform would be in the place that it would be now. We've already Brexited. Yes, the concerns over net zero and the like, but it is immigration. And that's why Nigel Farage talks a lot about it. Well, because he's obviously concerned about it personally, but because huge numbers of the public are, and they don't believe Labour's going to do anything about it either. And you get so until that issue is properly, sorted, Reform will do well.
And on the one hand, lots of people who voted Remain are saying, well, Brexit's been a failure because, we haven't taken control of our borders, etc., etc. But what Nigel Farage and Brexiteers, some at least, are saying is that it's not the fact that we've left the European Union that's the problem, it's that the previous Tory government didn't seize the opportunity of Brexit and make this country a better place. That's their argument.
Well, gbnews.com/your say. Do let us know what you make of billionaires being involved in politics. Or do you worry about it? Paul Richards there saying that this proves that Reform doesn't care about the little person and that it's all about the property magnates and everything like that. Is that the case? Is that the case? Or if you've just got a bit of money and you care passionately about a cause, do you want to put some of your money behind it? I mean, the great philanthropists of the world, people with huge amounts of money, they decide to put money behind things they care about. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, and you made the point, Emily, that every big political party gets millions of pounds worth of donations. Ali, what? The Labour donor as well. Wahid Ali, that's the one. There we go.
Wahid Ali.
Yes, he's donated to Labour.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if Nick Candy's going to be donating any clothes or spectacles. Probably not. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on the show.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's about Generation Z spending 6 hours a day online. Generation Z, which age group is that?
That's 16 to 24.
OK, great.
Now, this could explain why there's 1 million young people aged between 16 and 24.
100%.
Not working.
Work.
Yeah.
And I did a TV show and we're talking about it, and the lefty person I was on with was making excuses for the fact that we've got 9 million people unemployed. And this woman, this mom, rang in and she was hilarious. And I thought she was going to have a go at me. She said, Carol Malone. I thought, here we go, another one. And she goes, you are absolutely right. She said, I've just thrown my son out of the house, who's 24. She said, my husband and I, she said, we worked all our lives, 2 jobs, to get him to college, to get him to a private school. Yeah. She said, he hasn't worked a day.
No.
And his attitude was, why should I? And you think... And she said he spends all day online.
On his phone.
That's all he's
Because
doing.
we would have gone to get a job because we were bored. And the trouble is, Jonathan, the younger generation are never, ever bored because the algorithms keep them stimulating.
Well, the dopamine hits keep coming. I think it's actually a problem for all of us. Yeah. Now, for anyone, if you just have a moment to yourself, a lot of people of all ages, what do we reach for? We reach for our phones, particularly for those, obviously, if we're with a friend, we'll talk to them.
Your age group, you're not talking about...
I know that I've spoken to a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s who also will just, if they have a free minute on the tube or whatever, they'll just look at their phone and read. And it's actually terrifying because on the iPhone, every Monday, it tells you how much time you spent on your phone the previous week. And it's
for you?
On average per day?
Fair few hours. I mean, a lot of that would be work.
Give us a ballpark. Oh, more than 5?
Occasionally 5, yeah.
Well,
better things to do.
Spending 6 hours a day.
Do you never read a book?
Well, that would be at night time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, well, good afternoon, Britain. It is now 1:50. Now, yesterday we spoke to Richard Holden, the Conservative MP, who was putting forward a bill to ban first cousin marriage in this country. It has been spoken about just now in the House of Commons. And there was one MP who decided to stand up and appeared to defend. Well, he did. He said that we shouldn't ban first cousin marriage, that these are sensitive issues and they need to be dealt with in a different way. So that was Iqbal Mohammed, an independent MP, one of the new independent MPs at the last election. So we're going to show you a little clip of what he had to say in a little bit. We're just getting it ingested into the system for you. It's quite something.
It certainly is. I mean, historically, some people married their cousins, including Queen Victoria. She married her first cousin, Prince Albert, and then, of course, they went on to have 9 children, and now their descendants are spread out across Europe in various royals and aristocratic circles, including, of course, King Charles and everybody else in the British royal family. And speaking of the royals, another 2 have cropped up again, haven't they? With Prince Harry and Meghan and their latest Netflix show.
Speak to royal broadcaster Helena Chard. Helena, we haven't got very long, so I apologise in advance. But yes, so what exactly is this? So they're not really in it that much. They're just sort of produced it.
They're not. This is the 4th output with their Netflix multi-million-dollar contract. And we have heard that Netflix are actually really disappointed. They've given negative feedback, so that gives us an idea of what to expect. There's been no excitement to the run-up. In fact, I'd say
Harry is celebrating his charity as well, Centre Ballet. But more on that this hour. Next hour, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overnight, some dense patches of fog are likely across some parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, most places just dry and cloudy, but there will be a few showers across the southeast. High pressure is dominating, bringing most areas a dry night, but there is a weak weather front just bringing a little bit of drizzly rain to Shetland, and showers continue to feed in on this brisk east-northeasterly wind over parts of East Anglia and the southeast. But elsewhere, it's dry, a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up for most places, but look at that for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A hard frost and some thick fog patches likely, particularly in and around Glasgow and across the west of Northern Ireland. Dense patches of freezing fog that will stick around for tomorrow morning's rush hours. Temperatures drop well below freezing here, staying above 0 across England and Wales. But won't be frosty everywhere in Scotland. More cloud over the Northern Isles and some rain and drizzle across Shetland, keeping temperatures well above freezing here. But across the mainland, a hard frost could get down to negative double figures through some sheltered glens and some dense patches of fog, particularly in and around Glasgow and, as I mentioned, across the west of Northern Ireland. And where it is foggy, fog may last for all of tomorrow. For most of England and Wales, it's just cloudy and dry. Still a few showers coming in tomorrow, so at times a little bit of rain coming down parts of the south coast of England. Equally, some brighter skies. Anglesey, parts of Cumbria may see some sunny spells. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland and Northern Ireland. except for where that fog sticks. And as I said, if it does, temperatures are not going to get much above freezing, even in the sunny spells, low single digits. Further south, yes, technically it's milder, but it's not going to feel very pleasant because of the thick cloud, which gets thicker on Thursday. We're more likely to see mist and murk and drizzly conditions across central and eastern parts of England during Thursday. Again, a good part of Scotland, dry and sunny, but it will be pretty chilly everywhere, single digits at best. Bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 10th of December. I'm Emily Carr.
And I'm Cameron Walker.
Well, the British government has frozen Syrian asylum applications as fears grow British jihadis could return to the UK following the collapse of the Assad regime. This comes as a former MI6 chief warns there could be a serious spike in the threat posed by Islamic State here in Europe.
This afternoon, the King is presenting the first Elizabeth emblems to family members of former firefighters, police officers and other public servants who have died in the line of duty. We'll be hearing from some of them this hour.
We will indeed, and this comes... Now, one of the new independent MPs in our Parliament is causing quite a stir because it's been noted that he, I believe, is the only MP to stand up in the House of Commons and argue against a ban on first cousin marriage.
Yes, which has now gone through to the next stage in the House of Commons.
It has indeed. It was just a, what do you call it? A 10-minute rule motion.
Yeah.
10-minute rule motion. So, yes, it's very much not being voted on as legislation yet, but it's, you know, making its way to that. But, yes, this independent MP, so he said we shouldn't ban it. He says, yes, there can be health risks, but he says some communities believe such marriages build family bonds. And he says MPs should step into the shoes of different cultures, step into the shoes of people from different cultures, and that we should not allow the state to ban adults from marrying each other, not least because he doesn't think it would be effective or enforceable. So it was a little bit of a confused speech. We're going to show you a clip from it to see what you make of it all. But it does show that in the House of Commons there is a variety of opinion on the issue of first cousin marriage, which you might not expect in Britain in 2024. But there you go. We're going to delve into that a little bit deeper. But let us know what you make of it. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch.
It is indeed. First, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 2 o'clock. The top story from the newsroom this afternoon. The UK and Germany have reached a landmark deal to tackle migrant smuggling. Germany has agreed to tighten laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers behind small boat crossings to the UK. The deal also focuses on intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, speaking at a meeting this morning with European leaders, said the agreement will strengthen border security and save lives.
Gangs have been getting away with it for far too long. That's why today's meeting is so important. In recent weeks, we have already seen the important impact of a collaboration across our countries, the significant arrest of a major suspect involved in smuggling engines and boats, involving collaboration between the Netherlands, Belgium and the UK, the series of arrests that have taken place across Germany with the French-led operations in the last week.
Billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a 7-figure donation to Reform UK after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds ahead of May's local elections. While speaking to our political editor Chris Hope earlier, Candy confirmed that commitment and called Reform the future of British politics.
My only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we'll break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
Well, as we were just hearing from Cameron and Emily, independent MP Iqbal Mohammed has spoken out against a proposed ban on first cousin marriages in the UK, calling the move unnecessary and unenforceable. Speaking in the Commons moments ago, Mr Mohammed acknowledged the health risks but stressed the need for a cultural shift, not legislation, to address the issue. He did condemn forced marriages and virginity testing, highlighting the need to protect women's rights. But the MP for Dewsbury and Batley argued that banning first cousin marriages would not solve the problem, instead urging lawmakers to approach it as a sensitive health and cultural issue. The UK and Cyprus have announced a new partnership to combat organised crime and illicit Russian money. Following Sir Keir Starmer's visit to Nicosia earlier, the two nations agreed to share intelligence and expertise to enforce sanctions and tackle financial crime. Cyprus has already frozen £1.5 billion of Russian assets since the invasion of Ukraine and joined a UK-led initiative to block vessels evading oil sanctions. Well, the deal marks the first UK-Cyprus high-level bilateral meeting since 1971. The Prime Minister says it's part of his plan to starve Putin's war machine and protect global stability. The boss of Thames Water has defended paying executive bonuses as the firm is pushing for a 59% hike in customer bills to avoid collapse. Chris Weston says competitive packages are essential to attract top talent, despite a 40% rise in pollution incidents and debts nearing £16 billion. The regulator Ofwat has already blocked Thames Water from using bill payers' money for bonuses and will decide next week if the proposed increases can go ahead. Critics, though, blame the water industry's focus on profits for decades of neglect, with unions now calling for Thames Water to be taken back into public ownership. An urgent manhunt is underway this afternoon after 4 students were sprayed with an unknown substance at the University of Greenwich overnight, triggering a campus lockdown. Police were called to the site just after midnight, where a man was attacked and rushed to hospital with head injuries. 3 others were also sprayed, though their injuries are not life-threatening. The substance was tested and found to be non-toxic, but the motive of that attack remains unclear. And the family of a teenage photographer who inspired the Princess of Wales during her battle with a rare cancer is setting up a charity to fund vital research. Liz Hatton, who sadly died last month at the age of just 16, captured global attention when she photographed Prince William at Windsor Castle, fulfilling her dream of working alongside top photographers. Her family's Just Giving page has now already raised over £30,000 towards their goal to combat desmoplastic small round cell tumour, which has no dedicated funding in the UK. Liz's mother, Vicky, says she hopes the charity will provide support to families and fund better treatments to, she says, give more children a chance to live. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for one more update at 2:30. Now, though, it's over to Cameron and Emily.
Right, it's 2:07. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily and Cameron Walker. Now, something interesting, alarming, different happened in the House of Commons just now. The MP Iqbal Mohammed, he's defended first cousin marriages. This comes as Richard Holden, the Conservative MP, set out his bill to ban first cousin marriages. Should we have a little listen to what Iqbal Mohammed had to say?
There are documented health risks with first cousin marriage, and I agree this is an issue. This is an issue that needs greater awareness on. Virginity testing, forced marriages, and the freedom of women must be forced marriage must be prevented, and the freedom of women must be protected. Instead, the matter needs to be approached as a health awareness issue and a cultural issue where women are being forced against their will to undergo marriage. In doing so, it is important to recognise, for many people, this is a highly sensitive issue.
So if women are forced against their will, then it's an issue. But if it's, I don't know, just you and your cousin and you both agree to it, then
yeah,
shouldn't be banned.
Well, I don't know any first cousin marriages, which would suggest perhaps it's
Are you
quite
sure?
well.
Maybe you do.
Maybe
you do. They wouldn't tell you probably.
Probably not. I feel like it's quite rare nowadays. I feel like perhaps it was more acceptable 100 years ago, perhaps when the science wasn't there as to the arguments as to why it's perhaps not a great idea. I mean, even royalty had it, as I was saying earlier on. Queen Victoria even married her first cousin, Prince Albert. So, yeah, it's interesting, but it's gone to the next stage in Parliament. But
I mean, it does look like he's defending incest in a way there. You know, as long as the women aren't being forced into it, then anything goes, I suppose. I mean, he did acknowledge that there are health concerns and that there are real health issues, so that's something.
Yep. Everyone entitled to their views, of course, in the House of Commons.
Should we speak to Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, who is in Westminster for us on this? Catherine, this has taken the House of Commons by storm. Also, I heard that Number 10 haven't got an official position on this either.
Yes, that's right. We asked about this in the lobby briefing an hour or two ago, and basically the government appear to not quite have decided what their official position is on this. But isn't it interesting the difference that these independent MPs who were elected back in July are making to discourse in the House of Commons? They were a handful of them elected in seats that Labour would otherwise have won largely on a sort of pro-Gaza ticket, and some of the things that they are coming out with are not what you would normally expect in the House of Commons. So we've had this today. Now it is going to go through to the next stage regardless, but the fact that Iqbal Mohammed is talking about this and saying of the importance of respecting cultural differences, because it is common in many of these sort of ethnic minority groups in the United Kingdom. But of course, if something becomes law, then everybody in the country is expected to abide by it. He also said that he thought it would be unenforceable, and it comes off the back just a couple of weeks ago of another of the independent MPs at Prime Minister's questions, calling effectively for some sort of blasphemy law, asking the Prime Minister, who sort of batted it away rather uncomfortably. So some difficult questions being raised by these independent MPs, rather different to what we would have had prior to the election in July.
Catherine, is this something that the government's number 10 is going to eventually be forced to give a position on?
Well, we asked them to come back with a response this afternoon. So the afternoon lobby, a little bit later, we will hopefully find out what the government's position is on this. Of course, it is a bit problematic to them because they've got a large number of urban seats. They will be mindful of offending voters, but at the same time, this is an issue that I think the majority of the population will see as fairly clear-cut. Richard Holden, the Billericay Tory MP that's introduced it, thinks this is fairly straightforward, that there are health risks. So, yeah, watch this space on what the government decide their position is just a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite extraordinary. I mean, he did acknowledge, this independent MP did acknowledge that there are health concerns, but he seemed to suggest that as long as the woman in the scenario is OK with it and isn't forced into it, then this is just an agreement between two people, and that we all need to put our... we all need to, stand in the shoes of people from different cultures to sort of understand what's going on here and all of that. But I'm just looking here from a safeguarding report from Bradford from 2019 saying that, cousin marriages cited as a significant factor in child deaths in Bradford due to these fatal genetic conditions. I mean, this isn't a cultural issue. Yes, of course, this is more common in different cultures, but I mean, this is so much more. This is so much more. This is something that is causing the deaths, the unnecessary deaths of children in this country. So it's rather depressing to see someone sort of defend it.
Yes, indeed. And I think this also follows on from a couple of years ago. The age at which you could get married was raised from 16, which seems incredibly young considering you can't have an alcoholic drink supposedly till you're 18, up to 18. Again, because in some of these communities, people would be getting married at 16 and, that was thought to be just too low. So it'll be fascinating to see what the government's position is on this, because I suspect if the government don't oppose it, that ultimately this possibly would go through.
Very much indeed. Our political correspondent there in Westminster.
Now, we're joined by Labour activist and writer Aisha Ali Khan, who I believe has campaigned on this issue. Aisha, thank you so much for joining us. What is your view on this?
Well, so I've been talking about this for such a long time. I myself am a product of a cousin marriage. I've had 3 siblings who have subsequently passed away because they had congenital illnesses. And I have a sister who is still with us, and she has learning difficulties as well and hearing impairment. So I've been talking about this for many years, for I think 15 years at least. And I do feel that the practice itself has reduced. So many people that I know who were married at the same time, similar time to myself, in the sort of late teens, early 20s, were married to their cousins, and they were married without knowing and understanding the actual risk of what they were letting themselves into. Subsequently, the younger generation are not interested. They've made it really vocal. Made it really clear, very vocal, that they will not be marrying their cousins. So I think the practice is definitely dying out amongst cousins and amongst the younger generation. Now, what I've just seen the same clip that you've all watched as well of Iqbal Mohammed speaking about that it's a woman's right and it's a woman's choice. And I think that's a bit rich because, of course, if a woman is going to give birth to a child with disabilities, of course it's going to be her responsibility. And I think it's really unfair that so many young people, so many older women who were basically put in a situation where they didn't have a choice. They had no idea what was going to happen, what they were letting themselves in for. And, you know, they've had to live with raising children with illnesses. They've become overnight carers. And one other aspect, I mean, like myself, I've just given my family as an example. The fact that families were then continuing to have more children that were also born with disabilities, therefore putting further pressure on the parents, on the mother in particular. And I think my sort of passion about it, my position has always stemmed from my own personal experiences being a child carer, you know, waking up in the mornings, waking up in the middle of the night if my brothers were unwell, going to the hospitals with them, translating from my parents, talking about our own experiences. So I think there's a lot of passion where I didn't want to see other people.
How hard has it been for you to speak out on this issue? Presumably there's a stigma. You don't want to be seen to be trashing your own community or your family, you know. These things happen. We know that there is still quite a bit of first cousin marriage and cousin marriage in this country. So how hard has it been? And what do we need to do to stop this from happening?
Well, Emily, you'll be really shocked and surprised that the stigma actually came from people in the UK who basically didn't know my background, didn't understand my family dynamics. And they saw, because I have spoken about this, it's been in the newspapers, I've given numerous interviews about this. One of the interviews I gave to the Mail on Sunday was one of the most widely read stories of that weekend. A lot of people feel, like you've just mentioned, Emily, that this is an attack against the community. This is having a go at people and their choice of practice. They feel religious practices, but there's nowhere in Islam that dictates that we must marry our cousins. It's entirely a cultural practice. And I feel that a lot of people need to be made aware of this, because you will get people who think, oh, this is an attack against Islam, everybody's being Islamophobic, but actually, no, this is a cultural practice. Just one other thing, Emily. I was working in Pakistan in 2010, and 14 years ago, by the way, and I encountered so many people who were themselves against cousin marriages, and they were more aware of the risks and the genetic illnesses that children would be potentially born with. And they themselves were advocating for genetic testing. So if there was a potential marriage proposal, families were more than happy to go to a local hospital.
Hang on, Aisha, there were people in Pakistan who were more aware of the potential risks than some communities here in the UK. I mean, that's a bit depressing, Aisha.
It was shocking. So when I was, obviously, these were my first-hand experiences, so I was able to come back to the UK and engage with local communities and speak about this in the House of Lords and so on, and say, actually, why are we holding on to practices 40, 50, 100 years ago when people in the areas that we hail from have themselves moved on? Why are we still holding on to this idea that we must keep the families together by marrying into each other's families? And that was a bit of a sort of eye-opener for a number of people. And I think when you speak to people, you will see community elders, you will see that they have moved from arguing that this was an attack against our culture, our religious practices, to themselves admitting, actually, this is not a good idea. But one other thing I wanted to point out, that the sort of ease with which we could go abroad and get married to one of our cousins and bring them to the UK, those laws were introduced 10 years ago, 12 years ago, which made it even more difficult. And that in itself put an end to cousin marriages, because if you wanted to bring your husband or wife over, you had to earn over a certain amount. So that was almost another reason why young people are not interested in marrying their cousins from abroad, or even in this country either, by the way.
Aisha, we could talk about this all day, but we have come to the end of our allotted time. Aisha Ali Khan, really appreciate your insight, and speaking from direct experience of how well dangerous first cousin marriage can be in some circumstances. Aisha Ali Khan there, I'm not sure Iqbal Mohammed's intervention there was very helpful.
Well, it sounds like the younger generation are much more well-informed, which is why there's less cousin marriages nowadays. But let's move on now to a different topic. Property tycoon and husband of pop icon Holly Valance, Nick Candy, has left the Conservative Party and joined Reform UK as treasurer.
Yes, the billionaire former Tory donor accused the party of making too many broken promises and also breaching trust. So just how damaging is this latest defection from Kemi Badenoch's party to Kemi Badenoch's party? Well, let's cross to GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, tell us, you spoke to Nick Candy, you spoke to Nigel Farage. This is a significant moment for the party?
Yes, I think it is. I think it's a moment when the party is getting serious about raising money to go toe-to-toe on the same page as Labour and the Tory party. I'm here now in Mayfair, where a few hundred metres from where I am, Nigel Farage is having lunch with around 80 business people, some of whom might donate to the party. Now, Nick Candy, he's the person who's come across today as the party's new treasurer. He has told us on GB News today that he thinks he can raise more than £40 million. That is by a huge amount of money for any party, far more than any donated to this party, Reform UK. Hitherto, the most money given to it in one go was £250,000 by Zia Youssef, the chairman. Here's what Nick Candy said to GB News moments ago.
The only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we'll break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
There's Nick Candy saying he thinks he can make Nigel Farage the Prime Minister. Now, that party has 5 MPs and 100,000 members, maybe paying 25 quid each. It's a long way away from anywhere near the Labour Party on over 350 MPs, and even the Tory Party on 120 or so MPs. But they think there is change in the air. There's no question that the shiniest bauble on the Christmas tree at Westminster is the Reform UK bauble. Everyone is talking about it. They're talking about it even more now with this guy has come in, Nick Candy. Now, he was there in the background when Nigel Farage came back to lead Reform UK during the election campaign. His wife, Holly Valance, she's donated already to the party. She's a pop star, known to viewers and also formerly on Neighbours, of course. But a big moment here for the Reform. The party's professionalising to take on the big guys.
Chris Hope, thank you very much for joining us, GB News political editor. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show, including a 26-year-old Luigi Maggioni has been arrested and charged overnight in connection with the fatal shooting of US healthcare boss Brian Thompson. More on that after this.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Christmas canapé offers partygoers a small treat that staves off hunger and soaks up the fizz. Founder and host of Crazy Sexy Food, Hannah Hardy-Young, joins me now with a toothsome selection. Lovely to see you, Hannah.
You too.
Origin of the word canapé?
Yes, French. Sort of from the, yeah, of course, from sort of the 1800s. It means sofa. So it's sort of playing on the analogy of someone sitting or lying on a sofa. It is about the garnish, traditionally sitting on a piece of stale bread or pastry. Obviously, it's evolved over the years. I don't have any stale bread for you, don't worry. But the idea is that it's something sort of garnish, something exciting sitting on a vehicle that you can put in your mouth in 1 or 2 bites.
It's obviously post-war. What is it? Is it 60s or 70s? How long have we been eating these things?
I would say around about then. And I think what's interesting, I mean, I always look towards even the 80s, a little bit sort of later on, where it's, where you sort of have that, sort of the classic vol au vent, which was, you know, a little bit dry, a little bit tasteless. And I think that's why I've brought a real selection for you to show you how far we've come. Another traditional one, obviously, being your pigs in blankets. I'm going to hold off for a second before I choke. Another thing that I have to say about canapés, there are a few little tips that I must give people super quickly. Make sure they're small. 1 or 2 bites. When you're at a party, you're standing, you've got a glass in one hand, then you need to hold it. There. OK, I would have preferred a glass of wine, but, you know, I can't stand these canapés where I have to put the glass down in order to eat the food. I want to do it all at once.
I couldn't agree more. You should never eat more than you can lift.
Exactly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. 26-year-old Luigi Maggioni has been arrested and charged overnight in connection with the fatal shooting of US healthcare boss Brian Thompson.
Yes, Mr. Thompson was shot dead on a Manhattan street in broad daylight last week in what's believed to have been a targeted assassination.
The suspect was arrested at a Pennsylvania McDonald's and after being recognised by staff. And we're joined now by the US political commentator and former Republican John LeBoutillier. John, thank you so much for joining us here on GB News. This has absolutely dominated headlines, I think, perhaps, in the United States. It's got particular traction online because there's been much criticism, but actually the suspect in all of this has been kind of glorified with his motive.
Well, you're not kidding. I mean, not only glorified, but we had people imitating the way he dressed with the mask and the gray jacket and the hood coming over and talking about how it's killer chic or some term like that. Then there were posts all over the internet about how these healthcare executives deserve to be killed, that they don't pay off medical claims. Apparently there's huge bad feeling towards the insurance companies to the point where people say it's okay to kill them, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And now we catch this guy, and as we learn about him, very well educated, from a very good family, went to a very good exclusive all-boys school in Baltimore that I know a lot of boys and men who went to it. They're shocked, I believe, that this guy is the killer. The one thing we're going to hear about a lot is apparently a year ago he had back surgery and he hasn't been right since then. And he's cut himself off from his family and has been behaving strangely. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's being reported. And will that be his excuse and his defense here?
Yeah, and John, the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro says in America we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences, of course referring to the wave of frustration, as you mentioned, from Americans who have seen their health insurance claim or care denied, essentially. But John, you raise a really interesting point about his background, the alleged killer's background here. Ivy League graduate, went to a very private, prestigious school in Maryland, where he's from. What would be his motive? You mentioned this potential back surgery that he has, but it seems a big stretch to having perhaps a botched back surgery to then killing a US healthcare boss and premeditated.
Well, I'm not going to make a defense for the guy. I don't know anything about it other than he did post in the last few months. I think it's a praise sort of remember the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, who'd written this endless diatribe against America, against corporate America. Well, by the way, Ted Kaczynski is a Harvard graduate. This guy, University of Pennsylvania, also in the Ivy League. Here he is reading the manifesto of the Unabomber. And I guess maybe he fancied himself as sort of a Unabomber who would go around killing corporate executives.
We've seen it.
By the way, I agree with Governor Shapiro. In America, we can disagree, and in Great Britain too, same thing. But we don't kill each other over it. You argue it, you litigate, you can sue, you can do all that stuff. We do not kill people because we disagree with them.
Yeah, it's interesting. These high IQ killers.
Yeah, and John,
you see that sometimes with terrorists and the like. Some of them very clever indeed.
Indeed, and John, you raise a really interesting point, and we talked about the glorification of this at the start on social media. Is there a big danger because of the glorification of this alleged suspect that there is the potential for maybe copycat attacks? And you talk about, the motivation behind it, the oxygen of publicity that this guy's got. Is that a genuine worry for authorities in the US?
I think a huge worry. And I think the executives themselves are worried. They've been hiring security like crazy in the last 5 days. You saw the headquarters where Mr. Thompson worked outside Minneapolis, has a chain link fence put up since then. They've scrubbed their website of the names of all their other executives. Other companies are doing this too. So, yeah, I think they are worried, and they should be worried about copycat crimes. I would be.
Yeah, absolutely. John Laboutier, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. Scary stuff. These sort of Lone Ranger assassinations.
Yeah, well, we'll see when he's extradited potentially to New York to face his charges.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll be a mental health defence.
Guess we'll find out. It's up to his lawyers, isn't it? But lots more still to come on Good Afternoon Britain, including the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's new series Polo, airing on Netflix. Must see or one to avoid? That and much more after your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It is 2:32 exactly. The UK and Germany have reached a landmark deal today to tackle migrant smuggling. Germany has agreed to tighten laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers behind small boat crossings to the UK. The deal also focuses on intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, speaking at a meeting with European leaders earlier, said the agreement will strengthen border security and save lives.
Gangs have been getting away with it for far too long. That's why today's meeting is so important. In recent weeks, we've already seen the important impact of a collaboration across our countries, the significant arrest of a major suspect involved in smuggling engines and boats, involving collaboration between the Netherlands, Belgium and the UK, the series of arrests that have taken place across Germany with the French-led operations in the last week.
Independent MP Iqbal Mohammed has spoken out against a proposed ban on first cousin marriages in the UK, calling the move unnecessary and unenforceable. Speaking in the Commons earlier, Mr Mohammed acknowledged the health risks but stressed the need for a cultural shift, not legislation, he said, to address the issue. He did condemn forced marriages and virginity testing, highlighting the need to protect women's rights. But the MP for Dewsbury and Batley argues that banning first cousin marriages would not solve the problem.
There are documented health risks with first cousin marriage, and I agree this is an issue. This is an issue that needs greater awareness on. Virginity testing, forced marriages, and the freedom of women must be forced marriage must be prevented, and the freedom of women must be protected. Instead, the matter needs to be approached as a health awareness issue and a cultural issue where women are being forced against their will to undergo marriage. In doing so, it is important to recognise, for many people, this is a highly sensitive issue.
And billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a 7-figure donation to Reform UK today after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds against May's local elections. Speaking to our political editor Chris Hope, Candy confirmed that commitment and called reform the future of British politics.
My only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we'll break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
That's it from me for this afternoon from the newsroom. Sophia Wensler will have a full roundup at 3 o'clock and Cameron and Emily will be back with you after this short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A largely sunny but cold day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Much more cloud for England and Wales, and we'll see some thick fog patches forming once more tonight, particularly under this area of high pressure. That's bringing a lot of dry weather. Notice the isobars still close together across the south. Much of England and Wales still a cold breeze blowing out there. Some lively gusts to the west of hills and one or two showers still grazing in across the far southeast of England and along the south coast. But for most it is dry. Some patchy rain turning up in Shetland later on. Generally sunny for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures, though, still struggling in places here, particularly where the fog is slow to clear. Further south, 8-9 degrees at best, but again feeling colder with that breeze, which will continue to ease down as we go into tomorrow. The winds remain light across Scotland and Northern Ireland. A little bit of rain trickling into Shetland, where it is a bit milder. Much of mainland Scotland struggling to get much above freezing, and the fog thickening up tonight, particularly in and around the Glasgow area and across the west of Northern Ireland. That fog is going to be dense, forming again this evening and lasting through the night. For most of England and Wales, it's just dry and cloudy. Some breaks in the cloud, northwest England, parts of northwest Wales. Keep some clearer skies here, may allow those temperatures to fall away. And still just a few showers feeding in towards London, across East Anglia and the far southeast, and still quite a brisk and chilly breeze blowing here. As I said, that will keep the temperatures up above freezing for most of England and Wales, but well below across Scotland and Northern Ireland, as well as that thick fog, pretty harsh frost. On to Wednesday. More of the same, although the fog is likely to be even more stubborn during Wednesday. It could last all day, west of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, particularly in and around Glasgow. Patchy rain across Shetland, the odd shower still across southern parts of England, but many places will be dry. Still on the chilly side, though, wherever you are. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Cumbria in the Harrington area, Ella Bank, that's the A597. It's closed at the moment between Holden Road and Church Road. An overturned vehicle there, so no way through and delays. To Anglesey, northwest Wales, Gwalchmai, the A5 there, the Holyhead Road, closed near the recycling centre turnoff. There's a burst of water main. Staffordshire, the southbound M6, Stafford South down to Gailey, 13 to 12, coping fairly well. There is a lane closed there for emergency repairs. Now to Kibworth at Beecham. If you're heading towards Leicestershire, the Harbour Road, the A6 by the Foxton turn-off, it's closed off for investigation work, causing queues that one. And still some queues on the southbound M1 in Hertfordshire from 6 at North Watford, heading down towards Junction 5 this lunchtime. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
OK, well, excuse me. That wasn't a very good start, was it? Welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's 2:39. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers across the country. And each day they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 10.
I'm the Reverend Mike Millman, and a very warm welcome to St Leonard's Church in Denton, where I'm priest in charge. The Office of National Statistics reckons that we sell so many Brussels sprouts in the UK over the Christmas season that if you were to begin lining them up in central London, you would get all the way to Sydney, Australia. That is a lot of Brussels sprouts. Now, whether you like Brussels sprouts or not, there is no denying that Christmas is a wonderful season for food. And rightly so, because food is right at the heart of the mystery of what Christmas is all about. See, food reminds us that we are dependent creatures. We need a life source, you and I, given to us from outside of us. And we see that in so many of the details of the Christmas story. Jesus, he's born in Bethlehem, which means house of bread. As Jesus is born, he is laid in a manger, which is a feeding trough. Why? Because just as we need physical food to sustain our temporary life, Jesus is bread for the soul, bringing eternal life to all who receive him in faith.
A wonderful Advent message there for you all on GB News. And you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by visiting gbnews.com/Advent.
Yes, you can indeed. And now, there is plenty more coming up on today's show. Well, there's a little bit more left on our show. But before that, we're going to speak to Martin because he's up at 3. Martin, I've been reading on Twitter and on our website that there is a big debate happening on your show today.
Yeah, there is. So the big debate is about feet on seats. Should you get fined for putting your feet on seats? I think so. Peter Blexy does too, because if you stamp down antisocial behaviour at a low level, then does it solve crime higher up? And meanwhile, Christmas came early today for Nigel Farage. 40 million quid. Nick Candy reckons he can raise from donors. But it's the real prize, the other side of the Atlantic today. Nigel Farage and Mr Candy both saying they would happily take Elon Musk's money, as predicted on my show in November. I think that's going to happen. Could Musk turbocharge Nigel Farage and reform to the moon? Tomorrow, 500 protesters, 500 tractors expected, angry farmers around the streets of Westminster today. I'll speak to their organisers about why they are still saying enough is enough. No farmers, no food. And also, as Syria collapses, could Shamima Begum be due a trip home? And where does Keir Starmer stand on this? Back in 2019, he said it was the wrong choice to revoke her citizenship. Last year, he said it was the right choice due to national security. More flip-flops than a lad's holiday to Benidorm. Where does Keir Starmer stand on Shamima Begum? That's all coming 3 till 6.
I want to say, Martin, on the feet on the seats in public transport issue, I have to say, when I was in Munich one time, I lived there for about 6 months as a student, and I once put my feet up on the train, and 2 heavily armed police officers came straight over to me and demanded that I take my feet down. So I learnt my lesson.
Quite right too,
Emily. I learnt my
Emily.
lesson. I mean, I thought it was a bit heavy-handed at the time, but you know what? Perhaps it's the right way of doing things, Martin. We'll catch up on your show at 3 o'clock. So there you go. Well, what have you got for us?
Honestly, I hate feet on the seats.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I was a bit rude, wasn't I?
Yeah, no, not really. The Sussexes. Anyway, Prince Harry and Meghan, their latest Netflix show,
Have a look at a little clip.
Prince Harry appears far more relaxed with a Netflix crew than he does with a journalist crew, like a news crew, for some reason. I wonder why. I mean, what do you make of that? To me, it's very American. It's very LA-like. Selling sunset vibes, maybe. But I think, you know, some people may well enjoy watching that kind of How the Other Half Live documentary, Fly on the Wall documentary
Yeah,
style.
I mean, if there's a bit of controversy, if there's a bit of romance, a bit of action here and there, then, yeah, I'd watch it. I mean, that's why I watch reality TV when I do, because it's... But I don't know if it's going to be like that, is it? Is it just going to be all about the competition?
Yeah, I mean, Harry and Meghan only appear in episode 5 of a series of 5 episodes. We know that their first documentary, where they were effectively, some would say, trashing the royal family, documenting their exit as working members in 2020. That did really well. That was
their exit.
It was a huge hit. I was putting it politely. A huge hit on Netflix. Since then, there's been a number of other projects, including the Invictus documentary that Prince Harry did, but all of them failed to meet the top 10, and they are being paid, Harry and Meghan, millions of pounds by Netflix. And is Netflix getting their money's worth? That will be a question that Netflix execs will have to answer in 2025.
I mean, Meghan's been an actress, so, you know, you could use some of those skills towards production as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Harry knows with regards to TV production, but I guess he's learning on the job,
Yeah.
I suppose. But yeah, I think there needs to be a bit of gossip, a bit of intrigue, a bit of relationships, a bit of drama, a bit of ag for it to be a good reality TV
I'm
docuseries.
sure there will be. And Harry is promoting his charity Sense Barley,
If
which
it's not
helps
just-
orphans of children who've lost their parents as well in Africa as well. So he'll be pleased to have plugged that during the
It all
documentary
looks rather
series.
beautiful anyway, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Coming up, outrage up in Scotland as the Conservative Conservatives are going to force a vote in Holyrood on the Scottish Government's plans to extend free bus travel to asylum seekers. This is getting heated north of the border. See you shortly.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Small mouthful of David Walliams now and what he's revealing, what he's talking about. Josh, where do you think this goes? Because there is a lot of speculation about David, who he is, what he is. Where do you think this takes us now?
Oh, I think he's an absolute sweetheart. I mean, it was such a joy to spend as much time with him as I did. And the where it takes us is simply that I think we're growing out of, I suppose, the fairly infantile idea that we might have had about gender and sexuality, especially over the past sort of 5 to 10 to 15 years, where the culture wars have gotten so hot that it's become very, very difficult to talk about any of these issues sensibly without feeling like you're going to get pilloried or attacked from either side. And so Uncomfortable Conversations is a show where we try to have those conversations sort of heedless of treading on eggshells or triggering.
And do you think, Josh, that these conversations will become less uncomfortable when you get people like Walliams talking about it and who he is and where he's going, and therefore more acceptable for other people to open up and say, I don't know who I am or what I am, but I know I'm different?
That would be my hope. Look, I'm married to a guy, so I have sort of bona fides on the gay card, and I always felt that it was somewhat of a caricature the way the gay community or lobby, so to speak, insisted on a certain way of talking, a certain way of dressing, a certain way of voting, a certain way of dancing, that you can only be a good gay if you're wearing arseless chaps and straddling a giant inflatable penis while you're going down Oxford Street during Gay Pride. You know, like, I always thought, can't we have a very big tent? And I think what David is doing here is being honest, being upfront, saying it doesn't mean I have to join a team, it doesn't mean I'm any different from the person you knew.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, there's a bit of a row in Scotland because the SNP are being pressured into scrapping their proposals to offer free bus services for asylum seekers.
Yeah, it comes as part of Shona Robinson's budget and, according to critics, shows how out of touch the Scottish Government is.
OK, well, let's speak to former Tory MP for Aberdeen South, Ross Thompson, on this. Ross, so essentially, this new budget, the new finances are out and free bus passes for asylum seekers are in. The Scottish Tories don't think this is the right priority. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. The Scottish Government, in a bung to their radical green leftist friends to try and get this budget through, have said that those who are seeking asylum in Scotland will get free bus travel, whilst, on the other hand, there are people, pensioners across Scotland, who have worked all of their life and paid into the system that are getting absolutely nothing. So this comes down to political priorities and the SNP choosing to fund bus fares for asylum seekers rather than helping needy pensioners in Scotland who are at the moment having to choose between whether they eat or heat their home. And as you can maybe see behind me, Scotland is pretty frosty and cold right now.
It looks beautiful out the back there, to be honest. But the Scottish Refugee Council is saying that this free bus travel is needed because it means asylum seekers don't have to choose between buying food and travelling to a doctor's appointment, for example. But I guess that's the same decision that some of your poorer constituents in Scotland might have to make as well.
I disagree with the Refugee Council, and I disagree with the decision that the Scottish Government are taking to fund free, taxpayer-funded bus fares for asylum seekers. People who we know disproportionately are young men, whereas we have pensioners, old-age pensioners, about 6,600 who could benefit from the 2 million that the Scottish Government are allocating to the free bus travel to warm their homes this winter. And I think it is the duty of government to support those who have supported government by funding them throughout their working lives. They're now at that stage where they need something back. And I just think it's a real slap in the face to people who have worked so hard, who are in a vulnerable position here in Scotland, to not support them with the winter fuel payment, and instead choose as a priority to fund free bus travel to those seeking asylum here in the UK. That just seems incredible, and I think most Scots who have a good dose of common sense think it's the wrong priority.
Yeah, Ross, what would you say to the charge by the Scottish Green social security spokesperson who says that the Tories are using the rights of people seeking asylum as a political football, and it's just typical, and I quote, typical nasty and cynical politics from a toxic Tory party?
Gosh.
No, it's actually the typical extreme radicalism we've seen from the Scottish Greens, who are so out of touch with ordinary people in Scotland. It's incredible. And I think that when it comes to the Scottish parliamentary elections in 2026, the people of Scotland will have their say, and we'll see an awful lot fewer Scottish Greens in the Parliament as a result, because the policies they're pursuing within Holyrood are harmful to people in Scotland and costly to the people of Scotland. And this comes down to priorities. They are genuinely saying that this year, whilst there is nothing to support pensioners through the very cold winter that we've got, we should be putting £2 million into supporting taxpayer-free bus travel for asylum seekers. This does come down to priorities, and sadly the Scottish Greens are making it very clear where their priorities are, and that is not with the people of Scotland, and certainly not with hard-working people and pensioners who are going to be freezing this winter as a result.
OK, well, I'm sure the debate will rage on. Thank you very much for your time. Ross Thompson, former Conservative MP for Aberdeen South. Well, that's it from us.
It is. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you for watching Good Afternoon Britain. Don't go anywhere, because Martin is up next with that debate about feet on seats.
Get them off.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overnight, some dense patches of fog are likely across some parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, most places just dry and cloudy, but there will be a few showers across the southeast. High pressure is dominating, bringing most areas a dry night, but there is a weak weather front just bringing a little bit of drizzly rain to Shetland, and showers continue to feed in on this brisk east-northeasterly wind over parts of East Anglia and the southeast. But elsewhere, it's dry, a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up for most places.